You ever think you could survive in a medieval Scottish fortress? Be honest. You've watched a couple of sword fights, heard the bagpipes, maybe fantasized about being a fearless Highland warrior standing on a battlement with the wind in your hair. Let's cut that fantasy short. Within 15 minutes of entering a real 14th century Scottish stronghold, you'd be shivering, gagging, probably crying, and desperately trying to invent central heating a few centuries too early. Welcome to the Drowsy Historian, where we tuck you into bed with the most uncomfortable, inconvenient, and downright awful corners of history. And tonight, we're escorting you into a fortress where even the rats might laugh at your chances of survival. Chapter 1, Segment 1, The Freezing Stone Walls. A commoner's arrival. You're not a knight, you're not even a squire. You're a nobody. An apprentice stonemason, kitchen boy, or livestock wrangler who's just been summoned to live and work inside a medieval Scottish fortress in the dead of winter. Congratulations. You've arrived at one of the most over-romanticized prisons in history. As you shuffle through the iron-banded gates, two things hit you immediately. First, the smell. It's a bouquet of sweat, mold, piss, and rotting barley mash. Second, the cold. Not cute, chilly morning air, cold. This is marrow-deep, spiteful, Highland wind-in-your-face kind of cold, funneling straight through stone corridors with no insulation, no glass windows, and no hope. And don't expect torches or fireplaces to help. Firewood is a luxury. The laird keeps it stockpiled in his hall, not wasted on the likes of you. If you're lucky, you'll share a small pile of peat moss with 4 other workers in the storage alcove they call a barracks. The walls, made of thick grey stone, are your constant enemy. They sweat with damp, they never warm, and they echo every scream, cough, and clang like a cruel amplifier. Let's talk about your new home's layout. Imagine a claustrophobic maze of winding staircases, uneven flagstones, and arrow slits designed to kill, not let in light. Want sunlight? Too bad. The fortress is designed to repel English arrows, not accommodate your seasonal depression. And speaking of arrows, meet your new co-worker Duncan, a wiry, foul-mouthed gatekeeper with 2 teeth and a permanent limp, thanks to falling from the watchtower during a siege drill gone wrong. He's the guy who'll explain the rules, mostly through insults and grunts. Duncan's been here 23 years and he's still sleeping on straw that smells like wet dog. He points to your corner. Sleep there. Don't steal. Don't scream at night. And if the laird's son touches your bowl, give it up, or lose your fingers. Welcome to job training, medieval style. Your typical day? Wake before the cockerel. Not because you're rested, but because the bells echo at 4,000 the AM. You trudge through freezing mud to carry buckets of slop, scrape crusted vomit off the great hall floor, or refill the latrine trench, yes, the open one down by the back wall that's somehow uphill from the kitchens. No one calls you by name. You're boy, girl, or oi, you. The laird doesn't care who you are unless you spill something during a feast or you're caught stealing oatcakes. That's when he'll learn your name right before having it branded on your backside. And don't think you can complain to anyone. There's no HR department in medieval Scotland. Duncan? He just mutters, could be worse, and tells you about the guy who got locked outside the walls for disrespectful eye contact with the Chamberlain's daughter. That guy didn't make it through the night. Want to wash off the filth? Ha! The bathroom is a stream 2 miles away, freezing cold and shared with the pigs. Soap? Maybe some ashes or stinging nettles, if the herb woman has time for you, which she doesn't. Here's a fun fact. Historians estimate that even well-kept castles had lice, fleas, and bedbugs in every chamber. Not just in peasant quarters, everywhere. You scratch in your sleep, in your shoes, in your food. You eventually just stop noticing. And speaking of food, hope you like oats. Boiled. Again. And again. And again. If you're lucky, someone will throw in an onion peel or bit of suet. The laird and his family? Dining on roasted venison, thick gravy and imported French wine, of course. Let's add a bit of sarcasm here because clearly your suffering is noble, right? You're part of the great machine that defends Scotland from the English, from rival clans, from evil outsiders. Except you're not a warrior. You're the one hauling chamber pots and hoping the rats don't chew your boots at night. By the way, those rats, they're smarter than you. They know where the warmth is, where the crumbs fall, and they don't get punished for being born poor. So, you've somehow survived your first 24 hours in a medieval Scottish fortress. You've frozen in your sleep, spilled chamber pot juice on your one and only tunic, and narrowly avoided being clubbed by Duncan for dropping a bucket of coals. But the real kicker, you're starving. And it's not the dramatic kind of hunger with fainting and poetry. It's the slow, gnawing kind that makes your bones feel hollow and your stomach start to eat itself from the inside out. Now, let's talk about what you're eating, or rather, what you're not. Oats. That's your entire food group. If oats were a god, you'd be its most devoted worshipper. Every meal is a variation on porridge, thin, lumpy, lukewarm and grey. No sugar, no spice, no sympathy. If someone drops an onion skin in it by accident, it's a festival. Meat, only if something dies nearby. And even then, the laird gets the leg, his idiot son gets the rib, and you're left gnawing on a cracked hoof. Bread exists, but don't get excited. It's coarse, dense, and full of bits that may or may not be pebbles. Dental care, by the way, is non-existent. You better hope those teeth last, because replacements come in exactly one style, not at all. Now, here's a fun historical tidbit for you. People actually believed food should match your humours. Feeling angry? Avoid onions. Got a wet cough? Too bad, the laird likes leeks this week, you don't get a say. The cook follows what the priest says, and the priest got his advice from a scroll written by a monk who's never even seen a vegetable. That's your healthcare system. Enjoy. And let's not forget drink. You can't trust the water. Not because of some modern germ theory, but because it smells like dead frogs and iron. So you drink ale, weak ale, warm ale. Ale that's been touched by everyone in the kitchen and possibly a rat. Don't complain. It's your only defence against dysentery, which is less fun than it sounds and far more common. Now let's paint a picture. It's the third day. Your shift starts before sunrise. The courtyard is still cloaked in fog. Your boots are damp before you even put them on, and the chickens have already escaped again because they always escape, and no one's patched the fence since the last siege, which happened when? Last season? Maybe last month? Honestly, no one remembers. You certainly weren't here yet, and no one's about to explain anything to you now. You shuffle across the cobbled yard, dodging puddles, manure, and the occasional blacksmith's apprentice who seems to actively hate you. Everyone's got a job. Yours today? Latrine duty. Again. You sling buckets of human waste down the waste channel that leads to a trench outside the wall. Except the trench is full. It's been full for weeks. But tradition is tradition. And the fortress isn't about to change its waste disposal methods just because of flooding or stench. Let's pause for a sarcastic moment here. Isn't this exactly the heroic medieval life you pictured? A brave peasant keeping the fortress running through his sheer willpower and loyalty? No. You're cold, underfed, lice-ridden, and being quietly poisoned by mould growing in your straw mattress. But hey, at least you're learning valuable life lessons. Like how to hold your breath for 30 seconds straight. And when you're not hauling waste or peeling turnips with a dull blade, you're expected to make yourself invisible. If a noble spots you slouching, that's a beating. If you speak out of turn, that's another. If the laird's son decides he doesn't like your face, you might be reassigned to the stables, where you'll sleep next to a mare that kicks in her sleep. Let's meet someone else. Moira. She's maybe 30, maybe 50. It's impossible to tell because life in the fortress ages people like spoiled milk. She works in the kitchens, stirring pots big enough to drown a child. Moira's face is lined with burns, her voice is a permanent rasp, and she hasn't smiled since the English raided her village 2 winters ago. But she knows the system. If you want a slightly warmer place to sleep, or an extra ladle of broth, you keep on Moira's good side. And don't ever touch the bread without asking. She once scalded a thief's hand with boiling broth and didn't blink. Nobody reported it. The laird even laughed. Meanwhile, up in the keep, the nobles are enjoying their third meal of the day. Roast goose, honeyed fruit, imported wine. A minstrel plays in the corner singing tales of honour and glory. And you? You're eating cold oats with your fingers in the storeroom next to the grain sacks. But don't worry, that storeroom also hosts the local catacomb of dead mice and rat bones. Adds flavour. It's easy to romanticise these places when you visit castle ruins on vacation. But those ruins? They're cleaned, curated, and stripped of everything that made life here so miserable. The stench, the cruelty, the sheer, grinding exhaustion of surviving day after day without warmth, purpose, or the slightest hope of escape. And the worst part? This fortress isn't even at war. This is peacetime. Chapter 2. Oats, Onions, and Rot. The miserable medieval diet. You wake up with your mouth dry, your head pounding, and your belly already growling. The problem? It's not even daylight yet. And you know what that means. No breakfast. Not for you. The concept of meals is reserved for those higher up the stone ladder. For commoners like you, food is a background event. Something that may or may not happen depending on how much oat mash is left, how much the laird's dog ate, and whether Moira is in a forgiving mood. Today she isn't. The kitchen smells like wood smoke and boiled cabbage. You shuffle in behind 3 other lads, all thin, muddy and silent, because speaking before Moira speaks is a gamble no one wants to take. She stands over a blackened pot with a wooden spoon thick as your forearm, stirring something grey and bubbling. It's porridge. Of course it is. It's always porridge. And not the creamy kind with the raisins and cinnamon your modern mind might imagine. No, this porridge is a lumpy, flavourless sludge made from barley or oats, boiled down with water so stale it has floaters. You watch her scoop ladle after ladle into chipped bowls. No one complains. One boy sneezes, and Moira smacks him with the flat side of her spoon without even breaking rhythm. "Bless yourself," she growls. As you eat, because you will eat it, you start to notice the subtle texture differences. One bite is smooth mush. The next has a pebble or maybe a barley husk. You chew carefully. Dental work in the 1300s is a one-time offer. Once it's gone, it's gone. Most folks your age have already lost a few molars. You've seen Duncan swish his ale and spit it back into his cup just to soften the bread enough to chew it. Speaking of bread, that's the fortress delicacy. When there's flour, usually rye or some other poor man's grain, and when there's time, Moira will churn out hard, dense loaves. The problem? They're often full of weevils, and you learn quickly not to complain about the bugs. Protein, they say. Better than nothing, they say. And they're right. Sort of. After a few weeks, you stop noticing them. Until one day, you find yourself actually looking for them because they mean the bread hasn't gone completely stale. Now let's add some colour to the diet. Sometimes there are onions, not often, but when they come, usually shriveled and brownish green, they're chopped and added to the mash. The result? A bite of porridge that actually makes your eyes water with flavour. It's a miracle. Until you remember that your breath now smells like a graveyard. Hygiene is optional here. Actually, that's generous. Hygiene is a myth. No one bathes regularly, and garlic or onion breath is the least of anyone's worries. You occasionally hear stories about spices. Cloves, pepper, even cinnamon. But these are exotic imports, meant for lords and feast days. Moira laughs when someone asks for salt. "Salt?" she says. "Go lick the stable wall." Same taste. On rare occasions, the fortress receives dried fish, usually cod or herring, salted so aggressively it could preserve your soul. The fish comes in tough sheets that need to be soaked overnight just to become chewable. They taste like the ocean and sadness. But they're packed with what you think is nutrition, and they give you the energy to carry barrels or climb stairs without fainting, most of the time. Now let's talk about drink, because heaven forbid you trust the water. It comes from a nearby stream, which also serves as a bathing spot, laundry site, and waste dump, sometimes all in the same hour. So, what do you drink? Ale, thin, warm, often sour. Brewed weak to prevent drunkenness, but strong enough to kill the worst of the parasites. It's handed out in wooden mugs passed from person to person, wiped with the same rag Moira uses to clean the countertop. A note on meat: if an animal dies, you eat it, not a second wasted. Whether it's a sick goat, a pig that slipped on the icy slope, or a deer gifted by a visiting noble, the whole thing is butchered and served. Livers, hearts, tongues, feet, nothing is wasted. Except by the nobles, who get the fine cuts and leave the rest to stew in a pot for the rest of you. If you're lucky, you might get a piece with a sliver of cartilage. If you're really lucky, it'll still be warm. And don't get excited about vegetables. They're seasonal, rare, and mostly considered poor people's food, which, unfortunately, is exactly what you are. Cabbage, leeks, turnips, maybe beans. They're boiled to mush and then forgotten, Fibre wasn't a concept, neither was freshness. If the vegetable isn't rotting, it's considered suspicious. Malnutrition is a way of life. People don't walk with pride, they shuffle with fatigue. Kids have distended bellies not from overfeeding, but from worms. Scurvy? That's the slow death of winter. Rickets? You've seen toddlers with legs shaped like crescent moons, but no one blinks. This is just life. Let's stop here and acknowledge the sarcasm. Because isn't this the dream? Living among noble warriors in stone fortresses, singing ballads and feasting under banners? History books love the pomp and pageantry, but they don't mention the cracked lips, the bloated stomachs, or the way people gnawed on bones until they bled. So you eat what you're given. You swallow down the bitterness, literally and figuratively. You scrape the inside of your bowl with your fingers and then lick your nails. You trade old boot soles for cheese rinds. You sniff the cookpot to guess what tomorrow might hold. And if you're lucky, really unbelievably lucky, you go to bed not entirely hungry. But even then you dream of bread, not cake, not meat. Just warm, soft bread. The kind that doesn't shatter your molars or crunch when it shouldn't. And that says everything you need to know. By midwinter, the air in the fortress thickens. Not with warmth, but with a hunger so constant it becomes a background noise. A growl in the belly, a haze behind the eyes, a cold that starts in your hands and somehow settles into your soul. It's January. The last turnips were pulled from the earth 2 weeks ago. The oats are growing mould in their barrels, and the rats have already helped themselves to the grain stores. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows the food's about to run out. Let's walk back into the kitchen if you dare. The hearth fire crackles low, barely warm enough to keep your hands from going blue. Moira stands by the cauldron, her sleeves rolled up to the elbows, face flushed from proximity to steam that smells vaguely of boiled bones and desperation. What's cooking today? Technically, it's soup. Realistically, it's water that once dreamed of soup. A few cabbage leaves swirl near the surface. A single chicken foot bobs to the top and vanishes again like a taunt. You queue up with the others, farmhands, stable boys, that silent girl who cleans chamber pots and hasn't spoken in 2 years, and clutch your wooden bowl like a relic. No one speaks. The scraping sound of the ladle against iron is the only noise. When it's your turn, you glance into the pot. It's nearly empty. Moira gives you half a scoop and mutters, "Better come early tomorrow." And you believe her, because when the pot runs dry, there's nothing to replace it with. You slink back to your corner and sit on the cold floor. The soup is barely warm. You sip slowly, trying to trick your stomach into thinking it's more than it is. The taste? Mostly salt and smoke. The occasional sliver of fat sticks to your teeth, and you cling to it like a miracle. This is dinner. This is survival. And somehow, you feel ashamed of needing it so badly. Outside, Duncan leans against the wall, gnawing on a strip of dried meat he swiped during last week's supply delivery. He sees you watching and chuckles through cracked lips. "Want to trade your boots for a bite?" he asks. He's joking. Maybe. You both know your boots wouldn't fetch half that much. They're barely holding together with twine and wishful thinking. Hunger starts to do strange things to people. You've noticed it. The stonemason's apprentice used to sing while he worked. Now he just grinds his teeth. One of the kitchen boys was caught licking the inside of an empty pot, eyes wide and feverish. Even Moira, tough as rusted nails, dropped a whole turnip yesterday and paused longer than usual before picking it up. She stared at it like it might disappear. There are whispers now, just murmurs in shadowed corners. But you've heard them. Someone stole a sack of barley. Someone's hiding cheese in the tower. Someone was seen eating something raw behind the stables. These aren't crimes in a courtly sense. They're acts of survival. And the fortress knows it. Let's talk about that for a second. Because in most romantic stories, the castle is the last refuge, the mighty stronghold that feeds the weak and shelters the poor. But in real life, the fortress eats people. Not literally, not yet, but metaphorically, chewing them up with hard labour, starvation and fear. And when things get truly dire, even metaphor can wear thin. Take last winter. No one likes to talk about it, but they remember. The snow came early, the food ran out faster, and the laird made a decision. He sealed the gates, said no one leaves, no one enters. Safer that way. The plague was on the road, or so they said. But between you and the frostbitten wall, there's no telling what was worse, the sickness outside or the slow, gnawing death within. People disappeared that winter. Not nobles, not knights, commoners, kitchen hands, workers, ones without family, without allies. You ask Moira what happened, and she just says, "Don't ask questions when the soup's hot. You stop asking." Even now, you can feel it coming again. The empty barrels, the missing chickens, the way people count potatoes like coins. You start making mental calculations. How long could you last if you rationed? Could you chew leather? Could you eat moss? What about rats? You've seen one fat enough to make a decent stew. You wonder if Duncan's ever tried it. You wonder if Moira has. And here's a bitter, sarcastic truth to chew on. You're not even in the worst position. You're young. You can still walk, carry things, work. You're valuable for now. But the older ones, the sick, the useless mouths, you can feel the stairs tightening around them like rope. Survival isn't fair. It doesn't care about kindness or loyalty. It's a numbers game. And when the numbers get too grim, hard decisions are made, quietly, behind closed doors. Sometimes with a knife. You remember one night, stumbling out of the kitchen after scrubbing pots until your fingers bled. You saw Moira standing near the livestock pen holding something small in her arms. A piglet maybe. Or maybe something else. She looked up, saw you watching, and turned away. The next day, there was stew. Thick, salty, rich. The best meal you'd had in weeks. No one asked questions. No one thanked her. And this brutal, silent understanding is what keeps the fortress running. Not loyalty, not faith, but a shared hunger, a shared desperation. And the unspoken truth that tomorrow it could be you in the pot. Chapter 3. In the hierarchy of misery that defines life inside a Scottish fortress, hunger and cold are only the beginning. Once your stomach quiets and your fingers stop trembling long enough to think straight, you're hit with another realization. This entire place operates on one thing, power. Not justice, not law. Just raw, unchecked power handed down from one arrogant man to the next, like a prized blade that's never seen a sharpening stone. His name is Laird Struan. He doesn't speak to you directly. You're too low for that. But you've seen him. He appears rarely, sweeping into the hall with a cloak of fur that probably cost more than your parents' cottage. His boots click against the flagstones like punctuation marks. His sword sways as if waiting to be used, and every conversation stops the moment he enters. Even Duncan straightens his crooked back when the laird's shadow passes. Struan is the kind of man you expect to find ruling a fortress like this, equal parts warlord and landlord, wrapped in a tartan of inherited ego. He was born into the title, of course, but he reminds everyone constantly that he's earned it. The way he tells it, he bled on the battlefield, outwitted the English, unified the clan. The way Moira tells it, he once cried when a chambermaid spilled ale on his doublet. You believe both versions. His authority is absolute. What he says goes. If he wants a man whipped, it happens. If he wants a woman's dowry confiscated, no one blinks. There is no council, no jury, no appeal. This is the law of the clan, and you're on the bottom rung of it. Below the horses, if you're honest, justice here is a grim performance. The Great Hall serves many functions, feast room, court, and punishment theatre. You've seen the shows. A boy accused of stealing a wedge of cheese, possibly true, possibly just unlucky, dragged before the laird. No lawyer, no testimony. Just a quick insult from Struan and a nod toward the guard. 10 lashes. Right there, on the cold stone, his screams echo in your dreams, still. The cheese, by the way, was later served at dinner. Moira says this is tradition. Better a tyrant than a coward, she mumbles while stirring broth. But even she flinches when Struan's men ride in from their rounds, armour bloodied from some border dispute with a neighbouring clan. These men are loyal, not because they respect the laird, but because he feeds them, arms them, and lets them take what they want from the spoils. You have nothing worth spoiling. The clan system is supposed to be familial. A big, extended family under one name, bound by loyalty and blood. That's the story they tell the children. In reality, it's feudalism with a kilt. Power flows from the top down. Orders pass like stones down a chute, gathering speed, smashing lives. And if you're caught at the bottom, you're just debris. Struan doesn't care about your name, your age, your hopes. He cares if you work, if you obey, if you show fear. That's the most important thing to him, fear. It's currency. It buys silence, loyalty, and most importantly, obedience. Duncan once told you the story of a servant girl who rolled her eyes while serving at the feast. Just once. She lost the tip of her ear the next morning. An example, Struan said. You try not to blink when he walks by. Let's talk about punishments, because they're a cultural highlight here. Stocks are popular. You've seen men locked in for hours, sometimes days, hands and head trapped, body exposed to wind, birds and worse. The laird's children throw rotten apples at them for fun. And if you're lucky, it stops there. The unlucky ones face the iron collar. A rusted ring around the neck, bolted to a post, forcing them to stand, to suffer, to be seen. There's no schedule. It ends when the laird is done being angry. And executions? Rare, but theatrical. They take place in the outer courtyard, always at dawn. The accused, guilty or not, is made to kneel, head bowed. A prayer is sometimes read, but it's not for mercy. It's for show. Then a sword comes down, quick if you're fortunate, clumsy if you're not. Duncan says, one man took 3 swings before the deed was done. The laird called it a lesson in persistence. There's sarcasm in the air here. Everything from the flags waving nobly above the gate, to the way the laird preaches about honour while drinking, imported French wine from a goblet made of horn. His idea of loyalty is a man kneeling out of fear. His concept of order is blood on the floor. And yet, this is the world you live in, not because you chose it, but because there's no alternative. No escape. Just thicker walls and colder nights. Even the clergy bows to him. The priest mumbles sermons about divine right and punishment being a blessing in disguise. You stopped listening after the 3rd time he called poverty a test of faith. The only real faith you've developed is in your own silence. Speak less, survive longer. You wonder what Struan dreams of. Probably more land, more taxes, more ways to cement his legacy in carved stone and human suffering. He doesn't see people. He sees tools, cogs in the machine. And when a cog breaks, toss it, replace it, forget it. And what of rebellion? What of resistance? You've heard whispers, yes, but rebellion requires unity, and hunger makes people selfish. You're too tired to fight, too cold to conspire. And the fortress is designed to divide you by skill, by class, by usefulness. That's the genius of it. You're kept just busy enough not to think, just fed enough not to riot, just scared enough not to run. So you bow, you nod, you keep your eyes low. You laugh when Struan makes a cruel joke, even if it's about you. And every night when you lie on your damp straw mat, you dream of somewhere else, anywhere else, but you wake up in the same place. Under the same laird, under the same sky, and if you're smart, you say thank you. There's a phrase you've heard whispered through chattering teeth and clenched jaws. Don't get caught between clans. It floats around the fortress like superstition, but it's no myth. Here in medieval Scotland, clan loyalty isn't a choice, it's a brand. You wear it whether you like it or not, and once you're marked, you're fair game for every feud, vendetta, or drunken insult that spirals into bloodshed. You never asked to be part of Clan Struan's domain. You were born somewhere to the east, traded to the fortress as payment for a debt your uncle owed. No one asked if you belonged. You arrived, filthy and confused, and someone handed you a tunic and told you not to die. That was years ago. You barely remember what home meant before this place. But the world outside the fortress walls hasn't forgotten. There are dozens of clans, each with their own tartan, their own grudges, their own family trees twisted with betrayal. And Laird Struan? He's made enemies with nearly all of them. He's raided cattle from the MacDougall lands, married off his cousin to undercut the McNabb alliance, and once executed a visiting envoy from the Frasers over a misunderstanding. No one believed it was a misunderstanding. And you? You're just a pawn caught in the crossfire. One night you're scrubbing the hallway near the armoury when 3 riders arrive under the moonlight. Their coats are too clean, their swords too quiet. You know they're not from here, but you don't ask. You don't look. Moira sees you frozen and hisses from the kitchen, "Inside, now." You obey. And just like that, you're hidden behind a stack of dried meat while the laird holds a secret meeting. You don't catch every word, but you hear enough. Retaliation, Ambush, kill one, warn the rest. By morning, the riders are gone, the laird is smiling, and the kitchen serves meat stew, fresh, rich, and silent. The fortress thrives on fear, but fear has its limits. When tensions rise and raids come closer, Struan doubles the night patrols. Duncan doesn't complain, but his muttering gets louder. "They don't pay us for dying in our sleep," he grunts, fastening his belt in the icy dark. "You ask if he thinks there'll be an attack," he scoffs. "Attack? No. Slaughter? Maybe." Punishments grow harsher. Rules tighten. Struan bands travel beyond the walls without written permission, something no one beneath the rank of steward will ever receive. You hear that 2 boys tried to run. One made it to the woods, the other was dragged back by his hair. The laird had him tied to the gate and flogged in front of the workers. A symbol, he called it. Of what? No one dared ask. Inside the walls, even glances grow dangerous. You once saw a blacksmith's apprentice beat another over a stolen copper coin. The laird's men stepped in, not to stop it, but to finish it. Turns out one of them was the cousin of the accused, and in this system, family justice trumps anything written in a book. That's if there are even books. Most can't read, including the ones who enforce the rules. Struan plays a clever game. He keeps his enemies outside, but makes you believe they're inside. He pits servant against servant, villager against guard. Every mistake becomes betrayal, every silence a suspicion. You've learned to keep your back to a wall, never speak in pairs, and always look surprised, never informed. One evening, as snow falls in lazy spirals, a fire breaks out in the storage barn. No one screams, no one runs. Everyone just watches, silent and stiff. They've learned not to react, because fires mean blame, and blame means punishment. The blaze is put out eventually, but not before the laird storms into the courtyard, red-faced and roaring. He demands names. No one speaks. Moira stares straight ahead. Duncan coughs and says he was asleep. You try to disappear into the stone. By morning, 3 workers are missing. The fire is blamed on carelessness, and the soup tastes of ash. What makes it all worse is the illusion. The pretense that this is justice, that this is order. Struan holds feasts where he toasts his own wisdom, speaks of divine duty, and praises loyalty. The priests nod like puppets. The nobles laugh like hyenas. And you, well, you refill their mugs and try not to vomit when someone mentions honour. But let's not pretend any of this is unusual. This is how feudalism works. Not just here, not just now. All across medieval Europe, power was inherited, violence was law, and suffering was tradition. The only difference is that Scotland adds wind, stone, and the occasional cursed relic buried beneath the flagstones. You've heard stories of ghosts in the tower, of a boy who drowned in the well and still cries at night. You don't believe in spirits, but you believe in memory. And this fortress remembers everything, every betrayal, every execution, every broken promise. The walls hold on to it, like breath in the cold. One night, while stacking firewood, Duncan leans close. "You know what this place really is?" he whispers. You shake your head. He grins, missing a few teeth. "It's a graveyard with a roof. Only difference is the bodies still move." You laugh, but it's hollow, because he's right. This isn't a home, it's a cage. One shaped like a fortress, painted with loyalty and scented with smoke. And when you lie in bed that night, you wonder, not for the first time, if the enemy outside is really worse than the ruler within. Chapter 4. Title, Smoke, Ash, and Thatched Roofs. Village Life. Below the fortress, step outside the fortress walls, and you'd think, perhaps, the air would taste a little freer. No laird Struan barking commands, no iron collars or draughty towers. But what greets you beyond the gates is not freedom. It's another layer of survival, stripped of ceremony. The village, if you can call it that, is a clutter of thatched roofs, dirt alleys, and smoke-streaked lives lived 2 inches from hunger and 3 inches from death. There's no real road leading into it, just a trodden mud track filled with boot holes, hoof prints, and puddles that never seem to dry. The village is there for one reason, to serve the fortress. Its people are its lungs, grinding grain, raising livestock, mending tools, and paying rents in crops they don't even have enough of to feed themselves. In return, they get protection. Not kindness. Not comfort. Just the vague promise that the laird's soldiers might show up if raiders ride in from the east. You're sent down to the village one morning with a broken kettle and instructions to have it repaired. Quickly, cheaply, and without any talking, as Moira so kindly puts it. The walk down is short but slippery, the wind dragging across the open fields like invisible claws. The air smells of wood smoke, dung, and boiled cabbage. Not much different from inside the fortress, except somehow even more tired. The first thing you notice is the silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that hangs because no one has the energy to fill it. Children sit on doorsteps, barefoot and blank-eyed, clutching dolls made of straw. Old women stir pots outside, squatting near low fires that sputter as if offended by the wind. There's no laughter, no conversation above a whisper. Everyone is watching, weighing, measuring, trying to guess if you've come to take or accuse. You pass by homes barely deserving the word, wattle and daub walls sagging under their own weight, thatched roofs patched with animal hides. One doorway has a pig skull nailed above it, warding off spirits perhaps, or maybe just a leftover from supper. No one seems to notice you except one boy with a runny nose who stares like you're a ghost. You wonder if you are. The blacksmith's hut is slightly less miserable, stone-walled and scorched black from years of fire. Inside, the man is hunched over a bent horseshoe, hammering like he's angry at the metal. He doesn't look up. You place the kettle on the workbench and wait. He grunts, waves a hand, and keeps working. That's the village way. No pleasantries, no illusions, just function. While you wait, you take it in. The village life you've never quite had to live. You think life inside the fortress is hard, and it is. But out here, it's slower, grimmer, more exhausting in a way that doesn't leave bruises but hollows people out. Every hour is spent keeping the elements at bay. Roofs leak, chickens vanish, boots rot. Illness spreads fast and leaves slowly. One cough becomes 3, one scratch becomes infection. And healing? That's left to chance, herbs, and the goodwill of a bone-rattling old woman who lives near the woods and smells like mouldy bread. There's no market square. Just a muddy clearing where people sometimes trade onions for needles or wool for meat bones. Currency is rare. Trust is rarer. And yet, the laird's steward comes every quarter to collect what's due: grain, chickens, salted fish. You ask what happens if they don't have it. The blacksmith finally looks up and shrugs. Then we owe more next time, or they take the goats, or the girls. You don't ask him to elaborate. Here's a delightful truth for your historical appetite. Serfs in 14th century Scotland were barely considered people. They couldn't leave the land they worked. They needed permission to marry. Their lives were recorded not in books, but in livestock numbers and crop yields. And if a noble decided they were unfit, that was that. No trial, no compensation. Just a missing family and a new hole to fill. And the worst part? Most of them still think it's better than the alternative. Raiding clans, wandering bandits, or starvation. At least here, they say, you have walls, even if you're not allowed behind them. Even if you're expected to die defending them from a distance. The blacksmith finally returns your kettle, bent back into shape but clearly not better. He charges you a coin you don't have, but accepts a pair of clean rags instead. Barter is king here. Or maybe desperation is. As you head back toward the fortress, you pass a girl no older than 10 feeding chickens with a cracked bowl. She doesn't flinch as you approach. She just stares, curious but not afraid. You realize she's wearing shoes made from stitched-together scraps of canvas and bark. Her hands are red from cold, her cheeks hollow, and yet, when the wind shifts, she hums. Just for a moment. A tune with no words, probably learned from a mother who forgot it herself. You carry that sound back up the hill, past the guards who ignore you, through the gates that groan like the fortress itself is tired of opening. Moira takes the kettle without thanks. Duncan nods once, as if checking you for wounds. Inside the fortress, there's at least the illusion of order. Out there, in the village, there's only smoke, ash, and survival. No banners, no feasts. Just people too stubborn to die. And yet, Somehow, you wonder if they're freer than you. You return to the village a week later. This time, there's no kettle to fix, no excuse wrapped in copper. Moira handed you a linen sack and told you to fetch eggs. You didn't ask where from. There's only one coop, and it's shared between 5 families. The lairds' hens don't lay this season, and someone has to make up the difference. That someone, as usual, is anyone who can't say no. The village looks worse. And you didn't think that was possible. The snow has melted into slush that clings to boots like guilt. The fires are fewer, the voices quieter. Something's changed. Not in a dramatic way. No burning houses, no visible corpses, but in a subtle, heavy kind of silence. Like the breath has been knocked out of everything and no one dares ask why. You pass the same boy with the runny nose. His face is cleaner now, but his eyes are glassy. His mother nods at you from her doorway. She's chewing something. Could be bark, could be nothing at all. Her cheekbones are sharper than last week. At the coop, you find 3 women arguing. Or at least whispering urgently in that way people do when they're desperate but still aware of who might be listening. One clutches a cracked basket. Another holds a wooden spoon like a weapon. You don't interrupt. You wait. When they finally acknowledge you, they don't scowl. They look tired. One says, "No eggs today, maybe tomorrow." But you both know that's not true. You've seen the feathers scattered near the back, the blood-stained earth. Someone killed the last laying hen 2 nights ago, probably out of hunger, maybe out of rage. The bones were found behind the tannery, picked clean. You offer a crust of bread. Moira's idea of bargaining, but they refuse. Not angrily, just blankly. As if dignity costs more than food, and they're not willing to sell it. Not yet. You don't go back immediately. You linger, wandering past huts and carts and laundry lines that haven't held anything dry in weeks. There's a man hammering a fence post with numb fingers. A girl coughing behind a haystack, eyes flicking to you like a rabbit caught too far from the burrow. You pass a pile of firewood carved into suspiciously even logs. Someone's been selling off parts of their own house. And then you see it. A crude bundle of twigs hanging from a doorway bound with string and herbs. It's a charm. Wards against spirits, evil eyes, bad luck. Superstition, sure. But also the only kind of insurance most villagers can afford. In the absence of medicine, magic will do. You spot more of them as you walk. Over windows, nailed into trees, tucked under boots. Someone even carved a sigil into their doorframe with what looks like a cooking knife. Because when food runs out, fear walks in. Not fear of soldiers, not even of death, but of sickness, of blame, of being the next one chosen for misfortune. And in villages like this, misfortune is always looking for a name to attach itself to. You hear murmurs, half whispers about a woman in the woods, a healer maybe, a witch, definitely. People say she cured a fever with moss. Others say she poisoned a cow with her eyes. The line between healer and witch is thinner than ever now, especially when the laird's granary stays locked and the priest keeps muttering about sin instead of grain. One evening, back in the fortress, you overhear 2 guards talking. Another one says, from the village, accused of cursecraft. The word feels too big for his mouth. Laird says we're to make an example. You don't ask what that means. You've seen what examples look like. They usually end with smoke and screaming. And so it happens. 2 days later, you're sent to deliver salted meat to the chapel and catch a glimpse of the courtyard. A woman is tied to a post. She's barefoot, her dress soaked through, her face turned to the sky. Her name isn't spoken, not even by the priest reading from a warped Bible, as if that somehow justifies what's about to happen. The crowd doesn't cheer. They don't cry either. They just watch, cold and silent as the fire's lit. Some close their eyes, others don't blink. You want to look away, but can't. Not because of morbid curiosity, but because somewhere inside you know this isn't about her. It's about keeping everyone else scared. Back in the village, the air feels even colder. The charms are gone. No one speaks of the woods anymore. The coop is empty and always will be. And now, They know exactly what price is paid for stepping outside the rules, even if those rules shift like shadows. You bring Moira the empty sack. She nods once, no questions asked. Later, she gives you a bowl of stew with more flavour than usual. You don't ask where it came from. You sit with Duncan near the outer wall, both of you chewing quietly. He grunts. Used to be worse, he says. You ask how. He shrugs. Used to be no stew. You look out over the village, smoke rising from chimneys like weak prayers. Somewhere, someone is carving another ward. Somewhere else, someone is preparing for a winter that never ends. You wonder if the villagers still believe in protection, or if now they just believe in surviving one more day. And as much as the fortress stinks of tyranny, the village smells of despair. Not loud, not theatrical, but quiet, lingering, like ash that never settles. Chapter 5, Siege Season. How your fortress becomes a death trap. You wait to the sound of the bell. Not the usual chime for dawn, or the dull clang for a spilled chamber pot. This bell is louder, slower. Each ring rolls through the stone like thunder, waking even the rats from their sleep. You sit up fast, too fast, knocking your knee on the edge of the bunk. Around you, others are already stirring, eyes wide, breaths held. Even Moira pauses mid-step outside, ladle in hand, listening. Duncan storms past, half-armoured and grim. That's when you know something's wrong. Siege. It doesn't come as a surprise, not really. Tension's been building for weeks. The laird's last raid crossed into Macaulay land. He stole cattle, burned crops, left a message pinned to a tree with a dagger. Struan rules this valley now. You saw it yourself, tucked beneath the blade like an afterthought. The priest called it a declaration of strength. Duncan called it a fast track to getting us all killed. And now, here we are. You scramble to your feet, boots barely laced, shirt misbuttoned, instructions barked down the corridor. Bar the gates, fetch water, boil oil. You're shoved into motion whether you understand or not. There's no time for fear, just action. One hand pulling, one eye watching, one mind racing. The fortress suddenly becomes a body in panic. Doors slam, ropes pull, shutters bang closed. Guards scurry along the parapets. Moira begins stockpiling dried meat, stacking sacks of barley into corners like gold bricks. The blacksmith stokes his forge until it glows like a wound, churning out arrowheads and spear hinges. From the tower, you glimpse the horizon. Smoke. A few black banners waving in the distance. Small dots moving with purpose, riders, men on foot, carts. Not a full army. But enough. Enough to surround you. To starve you, to break you slowly, like wolves worrying a deer until it can't run anymore. You thought the fortress was impenetrable. That was the point, right? Walls thick enough to stop arrows. Gates too strong to ram. But you're quickly learning it's not the walls that fail first. It's everything inside them. There's no plan. Or if there is, it's written in a language only the laird understands. He makes speeches, loud, self-congratulatory things about glory and honour. He rides the ramparts in a fur cloak, shouting down encouragement like he's already won. You know better. You've seen the way Duncan bites his cheek when the laird speaks. You've seen the looks exchanged by the guards. It starts with the water. The well in the courtyard runs deep, but it isn't bottomless. And as soon as the outer fields are lost, so is access to the stream. The laird's steward orders the well covered with a wooden lid. To prevent sabotage, he says. Moira scoffs. Or because it's already contaminated. You fetch buckets anyway. You boil them until your lungs fill with steam. You ration every drop, then the food. At first it seems manageable. Moira has salted meat, dried peas, root vegetables that can last weeks. But what you didn't know, what none of the servants knew, is that the laird has been hosting feasts up until yesterday. Grand affairs with roasted goose, bread rolls, mead. To show strength, he said, to show foolishness more like. Now what's left won't last 2 weeks, let alone through a siege. Rationing begins. Moira is appointed keeper of the stores, mostly because no one dares cross her. Her list is absolute. Workers get 1 ladle of stew, guards get 2. Nobles eat separately, still warmer. You're not surprised, you're just hungrier. The villagers? They're gone. The gates were shut the moment the bell rang. Only those already within the walls are allowed to stay. That's maybe 30 extra mouths crammed into hallways, stairwells, anywhere they'll fit. You see a girl from the village sleeping in a hallway beside a barrel of arrows, her head resting on her mother's shawl. No one complains. No one dares. The rules are gone now. All that matters is staying alive. Then come the tests. The first real attack happens at night. A shower of arrows. Nothing aimed, just a message. One finds a chink in the wall and pins a cook's boy to the pantry door. You see it the next morning. The body is stiff, mouth open, eyes dry from the wind. The arrow's still in place, as if pointing blame. The lad orders a retaliatory fire launched from the tower. It's mostly for show. No one thinks the enemy will be impressed. But it makes noise. Smoke. Illusion. And illusion is all the lad has left. Inside, the tension thickens. Fights break out. A guard accuses a stable hand of hoarding bread. He's dragged into the courtyard and beaten with the flat of a sword. No one helps. Moira watches with folded arms and cold eyes. Won't be the last, she says. And you believe her, because every day without food is a chisel to the mind. People grow suspicious. Eyes linger too long on pockets. Someone accuses a maid of poison when the stew makes them sick. Duncan catches a man trying to climb the wall. "Where would you go?" he asks. The man shrugs. "Anywhere but here." But the fortress holds, for now. The enemy waits. They don't need to fight. They just sit, let the snow fall, let your supplies vanish. Their fires burn on the hillsides. Their laughter sometimes carries on the wind. It's the laughter that hurts most. Because you begin to realize the fortress isn't a shield, it's a trap. A stone sarcophagus built for defense that becomes your tomb the moment escape is no longer an option. You eat, you sleep, you boil water, and you hope. But hope dries faster than the meat. And through it all, the lad parades like a war god. His men shout his name from the towers. His steward counts beans like their treasure. You watch them both and feel nothing. Not anger, not fear. Just a hollow, gnawing sense that you were never meant to survive this place. You were only meant to serve it. 3 weeks in, the fortress begins to rot from the inside. Not the stone, not the gates. Those still stand, looming and proud. But the people. The structure may be built of granite, but it is filled with flesh, and flesh doesn't hold up nearly as well. Hunger deepens, silence grows, and something dark settles into the halls like mildew. People don't talk much now. They whisper. They shuffle. They avoid each other's eyes. You wake one morning and know something is wrong before your feet touch the floor. There's a stillness. Not peace. Never peace. But that eerie, fragile silence that comes right before something breaks. You pull your threadbare tunic tighter around yourself and step into the hallway. A woman sobs softly in a corner, clutching a wrapped bundle. You don't ask what's inside. You already know. The child didn't starve, not directly. Moira says it was gut sickness. The stew hadn't boiled long enough the night before. The meat was questionable. But what matters is that it was eaten, because that's the gamble now. Eat and maybe die from what's in the bowl. Or don't and die for certain. The lad's steward holds a meeting in the great hall. You're not invited, of course, but Duncan is, and he reports it back with his usual dry venom. We're to thin the portions again, nobles exempt. Moira laughs when she hears that. A laugh so sharp it could cut linen. Let them eat each other, she mutters. See how noble their bones are then. But jokes can't fill bowls. That night your ration is a spoonful of barley and cloudy water. It doesn't even register as food. Your stomach growls louder after eating than before. Sleep becomes a matter of distraction, not rest. You lie in the cold, eyes open, counting the breaths of the person beside you, hoping they keep coming. Because fewer people are waking up each morning. And then the sickness comes. It starts with a cough. Deep, rattling, wet. At first it's blamed on the smoke from the torches, the cold air in the tunnels. But then comes the fever, the shaking, the vomiting. One man collapses while shoveling snow from the gate. Another vomits blood beside the well. Soon, there's a pile of straw outside the kitchen designated for the sick and a second pile beside it for the dead. There's no doctor. Just Moira, grinding herbs and muttering prayers under her breath. She ties cloth around her mouth and instructs others to burn rags after use. Most ignore her. They're too tired, too scared, or too stupid. Within days, the fear spreads faster than the illness. People start refusing to eat from communal bowls. They sleep further apart, clutching blankets like shields. One night, someone locks a sick boy in the grain cellar. The next morning, he's dead. Not from the disease, from the cold. Moira doesn't speak all day. Even Duncan begins to look worried. He doesn't say it outright, but you see it in the way he checks the gate less and the well more. He stops talking about battle strategy and starts asking how many candles are left. His sword stays in its sheath. What use is it against breath? The laird, of course, is unaffected. Or so he claims. He still appears on the parapets, still gives speeches, but fewer people gather now. And when he walks the hall, people press themselves into the walls to avoid his passing. Not out of respect, out of fear he might breathe on them. Then the food runs out, not slowly, not gradually. One day, it's just gone. Moira opens the last barrel and finds weevils. She doesn't even flinch, just nods and mutters, "Protein." Rats vanish too. Whether they fled the sickness or were caught and eaten is unclear. But they're gone. The walls seem to groan with emptiness. The air smells of unwashed bodies, spoiled broth, and candle smoke. The fortress, once noisy with shouts, boots, clangs, is now mostly quiet. Just coughs, footsteps, the occasional scream. And the worst part, no one's attacking. The enemy waits outside, fires glowing on the hills like stars fallen too low. They don't need to break the gates, they just sit. Listen, let your fortress cannibalize itself. One night, someone tries to escape. You don't know who, just that they used a rope made from sheets and climbed down the tower wall. The body is found the next morning, riddled with arrows, face frozen in a silent scream. The laird doesn't make an example of it, he doesn't need to, the example makes itself. Duncan stops shaving. Moira starts praying. And you? Well, you start planning. Not escape, that's foolish, but survival. You learn who has spare crusts, who'll trade a pair of socks for a candle stub. You learn that the sickest coughs come at night, and that sleep is more dangerous than hunger. If you die quietly, no one will know until morning. If you die loudly, no one will help anyway. One afternoon, while hauling empty barrels to make room for bodies, you hear a laugh. A real one. Harsh, surprised, ugly. A guard found a wedge of cheese under a floorboard. He eats it then and there, mould and all. 5 hours later, he's dead. No one mourns him. They mourn the cheese. Moira starts boiling pine needles. Vitamin, she says, probably. You drink it. It tastes like failure. By the end of week 4, you've lost track of the days. The sun rises and sets behind grey clouds. The walls drip condensation like tears. You forget your own reflection. You forget most names. The laird stops appearing altogether. Rumour says he's locked in the chapel, feverish and raving. You wonder if the gods he's praying to remember his name. And still, the enemy waits. No assault, no challenge, just the slow, grinding patience of starvation. And your mighty fortress? It isn't a fortress anymore. It's a coffin with banners. Chapter 6. Ghosts in the dungeons. Torture and imprisonment. The dungeons lie beneath the fortress, carved deep into the rock like scars that never healed. Most people forget they exist, until they're reminded by a scream echoing through the stone, or a heavy door creaking open in the dead of night. You'd heard about them before, of course. Everyone had. But hearing is different from seeing, and seeing is different from descending into the dark with a torch that flickers like it, knows it doesn't want to go either. Duncan sends you down, not because you've done anything wrong, but because someone needs to deliver the buckets. Buckets of water, buckets of gruel, buckets for other things. Don't talk, don't stare. Don't listen, he says. Just drop them and go. You ask why you. He shrugs. Because Moira's too busy and I don't like the new boy. The stairs are narrow, steep, wet. Each step feels like it's been waiting centuries for a foot to slip. You touch the wall, one hand holding the iron pail, the other gripping the torch. The deeper you go, the less the fortress feels like stone and more like bone. Cold, damp bone that hums quietly underfoot. The dungeon isn't a single room. It's a twisting network of corridors, cells, storage closets and oubliettes, holes in the floor meant for the forgotten. The walls weep moisture. The air smells of old blood, sweat, and something worse. Something sweet and sour at the same time. Rot, maybe, or grief. Your first time, you try not to look, but you do. You see hands reaching through bars, eyes peeking from shadows. Some plead, some glare, some don't move at all. You don't know their names, you're not supposed to. Knowing names makes people human, and that makes it harder to ignore them. The guards here are different, quieter, more careful. Their armour is dull, their faces unreadable. They speak in mutters. One carries a whip, not dramatically, not slung across his shoulder like in Tales, just looped around his belt like a common tool, like a ladle, or a key. You don't know what most of these people did. Theft, probably, maybe rebellion, maybe nothing. The line between guilt and punishment here is thin and constantly shifting. Duncan once told you a man was imprisoned for looking too long at the laird's horse. Another for stealing a candle during rationing. What happened to them, you asked? Duncan didn't answer. You pass a cell with a boy no older than 16. He's sitting cross-legged, carving something into the wall with a stone. You can't see what it is. He doesn't look up, doesn't ask for food, just carves. You wonder how long he's been here. You wonder what he did. You wonder if it even matters. Then you see the chair. It's tucked into a side room, lit by a single torch bracketed into the wall. It looks like a regular chair, until you notice the straps. The stains. The faint grooves worn into the arms where fingers must have gripped too hard. No one's in it now. But it's not empty. Not really. It holds the memory of screams, the ghosts of confessions. Whether true or not, who can say? Torture isn't dramatic down here. There's no ceremony, no villain monologuing while thunder rolls. It's quiet, calculated, a method, not a madness. Someone screams, it's muffled. Someone begs, the stone absorbs it. You get the sense that the dungeon isn't a place of justice, it's a pressure valve. A warning system, hurt one to silence 10. Moira says it's always been this way. The dungeon's not for the guilty, she once told you. It's for the inconvenient. And right now, with food vanishing and tempers rising, inconvenience is everywhere. A man speaks too loudly about the laird's failings, down he goes. A woman refuses to give up her share of oats, down. Someone seen sneaking toward the wall with rope, you guessed it, down. And sometimes they don't even come from inside. One evening, a prisoner is dragged in wearing village rags. You recognize the fabric. Someone from outside the walls, maybe a messenger, maybe a deserter, maybe a scapegoat. You don't ask. You just carry the pail of water and try not to trip over the chain trailing behind his ankle. The worst part isn't the violence, it's the forgetting. People vanish down here, and after a few days, no one speaks of them. As if the stone itself consumes memory. You start to wonder if that's the real punishment, not pain, not fear, but erasure. To scream and not be heard. To rot and not be remembered. You deliver the buckets. You say nothing. You avoid the chair. And still, part of you listens. You can't help it. One night, while scraping grime from the floor, you hear a voice whispering a prayer in a language you don't recognize. Soft, slow, rhythmic. It doesn't sound desperate. It sounds resigned. As if the speaker knows the gods have stopped listening but wants to speak anyway. There's another cell you pass each time. Its door is heavier, reinforced, no window, no sound. You've never seen anyone go in or out. Duncan calls it the silence box. No one explains what it's for, you don't ask. But once, you pause too long near it, and a guard jabs you with a boot. Move, he says. And you do. You always do. When you return to the surface, the light blinds you. The air feels false, too fast, too loud. You smell roasting onions and your stomach turns. You think of the boy with the carving stone. You think of the silence box. You think of the chair. Moira sees your face and doesn't ask. Just hands you a cloth and says, you get used to it. But you're not sure that's true. You're not sure you want it to be. Because if you ever truly get used to the dungeon, that me, you'd think the worst thing about a dungeon would be the screams. But they fade. With time, with routine, with sheer mental necessity, they become part of the background hum, like dripping water or the shuffle of boots across damp stone. What truly starts to break you, what claws at the edges of your sanity, is the quiet. The deep, crawling, unnatural quiet that lives between the cries. That silence is hungry. It waits. And it never lets you leave unchanged. By your third week doing supply runs to the lower levels, something has shifted in you. You no longer flinch at the chains. You know which step creaks. You recognize certain voices now, not by name, but by rhythm. The one who hums lullabies to himself. The one who mutters confessions on repeat. The one who stopped making any noise at all. You don't know who they are, and you never ask. Names make things harder. Duncan notices. One morning, as you pass him at the gate, he nods to the pail and says, "You've got the walk now." You blink. What walk? He squints at you. The dungeon walk. That slow drag like your soul's caught on the last stair. You laugh, just once, and realize too late that it wasn't really a laugh at all. Just a sound. Something else you've learned, the deeper parts of the dungeon aren't just for prisoners. They're for secrets. The fortress isn't just a stronghold. It's a vault of everything that shouldn't be seen. There's a corridor past the third junction that leads nowhere, supposedly. But you've seen people go down it and not return. Guards, mostly. Once, a steward. Once, someone in robes you didn't recognize. No one talks about what's back there. No one wants to. One day, you're ordered to deliver a message scroll to the lowest cell block. No bucket this time. Just a sealed roll of parchment tied with a black ribbon. The guard who gives it to you doesn't explain. Just says, leave it in the last cell on the left. When you ask why you, he doesn't answer. You descend slower than usual. Torchlight dances in nervous patterns. You pass the cells, one by one. The boy with the carving stone is gone now. His wall bears a single word in Latin, memony, I remember. You stare at it too long. The last cell on the left isn't locked. That alone is enough to unsettle you. You push the door with your foot. It creaks open to reveal nothing, just stone walls, straw, chains, and the smell. Sharp, chemical, wrong. Not human filth, but something alchemical. You leave the scroll and back out, closing the door without turning your back. Later, you ask Duncan what that cell was. He frowns. There's no cell on the left, just storage. You want to believe he's joking. You want even more to believe he's mistaken. But the look in his eyes says something else. The kind of look a man gives when he's choosing between lying to you or admitting that what you saw shouldn't exist. As the siege outside drags on and sickness thickens in the air above, the dungeon below grows louder. Not with voices, with movement. You start hearing things. Scrapes. Chains rattling in empty rooms. Once, you find a torch lit in a corridor that hasn't been used in days. Another time, a door stands open you know was shut. You don't mention it, you just work faster. Talk less. The guards change too. You notice one who stares too long at the walls, as if trying to see through them. Another who refuses to go beyond the first level, muttering something about echoes. They all look tired. Not surface tired, deep tired. The kind that lives behind the eyes and doesn't sleep when the body does. And then the punishments begin to blend. The line between prisoner and jailer is thinner than you thought. Guards vanish, replaced without mention. One is found in a cell, curled in the straw, eyes wide, mouth open. Delirium, they say. He got too close to one of the mad ones. But you wonder, did he become mad, or did he see something that refused to leave? Moira, who once treated the dungeon with bitter practicality, now tells you not to go alone. Even stone forgets what it holds, she says. And when it remembers, it doesn't like witnesses. You nod, but you still go, because someone has to. Then comes the girl. You've never seen her before. Young, red hair, pale skin. Shackled in a cell near the silent corridor. You're sure she wasn't there yesterday. She doesn't look at you when you drop her food, doesn't move. But when you return later, the food is gone. You ask Duncan who she is. He frowns. What girl? You take him down. The cell is empty. No sign anyone was ever there. He doesn't speak for the rest of the day. You start dreaming of stairs, of doors that don't open, of torches that go out all at once. You wake in sweat, heart pounding. Not because of monsters, because of memory. The dungeon isn't haunted, it is the haunting. It holds everything the fortress wants to forget, and it's been forgetting for too long. And maybe, just maybe, it wants to be remembered. One final moment, you pass by the silence box again. Just once, just a glance. The door is ajar, not much, just a crack. Enough to see a shadow inside, sitting, waiting. You freeze. The torch in your hand sputters, you blink, and the door is shut. You don't speak of it. You climb back up the stairs slower than usual. The air above tastes different, sharp, harsh, alive. You stand in the courtyard for too long, eyes adjusting. Duncan walks by, pauses. You all right? He asks. You lie. Because in the fortress, truth is dangerous, and in the dungeon, truth is dead. Chapter 7. War Horns and Blood Oaths. The grim call to battle. You hear it just after sunrise. The horn. Not the sharp signal of a gate opening or the deep boom for ration time. This one's longer. Lower. It rises like something crawling out of the earth and echoes through the stone like a summons from the grave. Every muscle in your body locks. You know what it means. Everyone does. Battle. You're on the battlements within minutes, dragged there with the other bodies too poor or too expendable to be kept hidden indoors. Duncan throws you a bucket of rocks and says, if it moves and isn't us, drop one. You glance over the edge and feel your stomach twist. The enemy has moved closer. Their lines are visible now, shields, spears, banners flapping like tongues. You don't see faces, just helmets and movement, a wall of intent. For weeks they'd waited, watching, starving you, letting rot and fear do their work. But something has changed. Maybe they're tired of waiting. Maybe they smell weakness. Or maybe someone told them what you already knew. The fortress isn't strong anymore. It's hungry, cracked, desperate. And now it's bleeding. The first wave hits just after midday. Arrows. Dozens, maybe hundreds, arcing through the sky in black streaks. You duck instinctively. One slams into the wood beside your head. Another takes a man in the chest 3 feet away. He gasps once, then falls. No one checks him. There's no time. Return fire is weak. The fortress bows are old, the archers older. They shoot from the wall, but their aim is poor. The enemy doesn't flinch. They advance slowly, confidently. They know they have more food, more men, more time. You're handed a pike next. It's taller than you, splintered along the shaft. You're told to hold the line. Which line? There is no line. Just terrified workers with blunt weapons and nowhere to run. Duncan appears beside you, axe in hand. His eyes are narrowed, jaw clenched. Stay behind me, he mutters. You nod, though it feels like a lie. He glances down at your hands. You ever used one of those? You shake your head. He doesn't laugh, just sighs. Pointy end goes in. The gate holds for less than an hour. They ram it with a tree trunk wrapped in iron bands. Each hit shakes the ground, sends dust falling from the archways. You hear the wood cracking before you see it. A few guards try to brace it from behind. One's crushed when it finally gives. He doesn't scream, just disappears beneath the splinters. Then they're inside. What happens next can't be called a battle. It's not glorious. It's not choreographed. It's a blur of chaos, screaming, steel, fire. You see a man's face split open. You see a woman stab someone through the gut with a broken broom. You see a child trampled underfoot. You see a priest trying to bless the dying and getting an axe between the ribs. You stay alive by accident, ducking when others stand, running when others swing. Your pike snaps in two. You pick up a stone, then a dagger, then nothing. You hide behind a barrel and wait for death to find someone else first. And still, above it all, the laird stands. He's on the tower balcony shouting orders. You can't hear them. No one can. His voice is lost in the storm. But he shouts anyway. His armour gleams. His sword is clean. He hasn't joined the fight. He never will. You see Duncan fight. Not like the others. Not wild. Not desperate. Methodical. Precise. His axe rises and falls like a heartbeat. He keeps you alive without meaning to, simply by being the nearest source of violence in your favour. But even Duncan bleeds. A cut along his arm. A dent in his shin guard. He grunts with each hit, but doesn't stop. You realise, somewhere in your shaking bones, that Duncan doesn't expect to survive. He's not fighting to live. He's fighting to end on his feet. You wish you were that brave. Instead, you cower. You crawl. You slip on blood and trip over bodies. You punch someone in the face with your bare hand and feel their tooth crack beneath your knuckles. You scream, not in rage, but in fear. Pure, unfiltered terror. The fortress burns. Somewhere behind you, the granary explodes. Sabotage or accident, no one knows. Fire leaps to the storerooms. Smoke pours through the halls. The air becomes thick and hot and wet. You can't breathe. You can't see. You crawl forward, unsure whether you're moving towards safety or just away from the worst. And then, something strange. The enemy retreats. Not all of them. Some still fight. Some still die. But many pull back. You don't know why. Perhaps their orders changed. Perhaps they wanted to test your strength. Or perhaps they got what they wanted. A message sent in blood. A warning. A promise. When the sun sets, the courtyard is quiet. The fires are dying. The moans are not. Bodies are everywhere. Some familiar, most not. You step over them like logs. You try not to look at their faces. You fail. One man's eyes are open, staring at nothing. Another has no face left at all, just a mess of red and bone. A guard you knew lies curled around his own intestines, as if trying to stuff them back in. Duncan sits on the steps, blood dripping from his hand. He looks up as you approach. "Still breathing?" he asks. You nod. He spits into the dirt. "Then it wasn't your time." Moira finds you later, hands you a flask. You drink without asking what's in it. It burns all the way down. You almost vomit. She wipes your mouth. "Next time, swing lower," she says. "Gut's easier than the chest." You nod again. You don't remember swinging at all. And above you, the tower stands. The laird still watches, still speaks, still untouched. You think about the horn, the one that called you to the wall. You wonder if it will blow again. You hope it doesn't. Because now you understand, battle isn't a climax, it's a chapter. One of many. And the fortress. Your fortress isn't victorious. It's just not dead yet. There is no victory feast. No music. No clapping of backs or drinking of warm ale in celebration. There is only smoke, and the smell of blood, and the quiet groans of people who haven't yet died but probably will. The battle is over, yes, but the aftermath has only just begun. If the siege was a long, slow death, and the battle a brief explosion, then this silent hour that follows, is the suffocation, the drowning, the weight pressing down on what remains. You wake to it. Not from sleep exactly, because you didn't sleep, you passed out. Somewhere between the sound of a man screaming for his mother and the sharp thud of something heavy falling nearby, your mind simply shut down. A mercy. When your eyes open, the first thing you see is soot, then blood, then Duncan's boots. He's sitting against a wall, leg bandaged badly, eyes distant. The axe lies beside him. He doesn't move, doesn't speak. You sit beside him without a word. What is there to say? You both lived. Somehow, others didn't. The courtyard looks like a butcher's stall. red streaks across cobblestone, broken shields, torn banners. The stink is almost unbearable, not just death, but death left too long in the sun. Moira arrives an hour later with a crew of half-conscious kitchen workers carrying rags and buckets. She doesn't waste time with mourning, just points. Drag them there, stack them there. Anything with a pulse, take inside. The rest, well, we'll see. You help, you have to. No one is above this now. The bodies don't feel like people. They're heavy, yes, but they feel more like tasks than corpses. Something to be done. You stop looking at faces. You stop caring which side they fought for. One body, then another, then another. Some still warm, some missing parts. You lift, haul, drop. Lift, haul, drop. At one point, you carry a child. 8, maybe 9. Wrong place, wrong time. Her leg is missing below the knee, and someone tried to stop the bleeding with twine and a tablecloth. It didn't work. You place her beside the well and step away. You don't cry. You haven't the moisture left for it. Inside, the fortress has become a hospital of the hopeless. The great hall is lined with straw mats and makeshift bandages. There are no healers, just Moira and anyone with hands. You tear sheets, you pour water, you wipe blood from foreheads. You press down on wounds that spurt and then slow and then stop. Some stop breathing too. That's just part of the rhythm now. The laird is nowhere to be seen. Rumour says he's still in the tower, untouched. Rumour also says he struck down 5 men in a single blow, that he wept for the dead, that he vanished in the chaos. All lies. You know where he is, hiding. Planning his next speech, practicing how to spin this loss into legend. Duncan finally speaks around dusk. They'll come again. It isn't a question, you nod. Next time, we won't have walls. Again you nod. He winces as he adjusts his leg. Didn't even get to swing properly. You almost smile. Almost. That night, the fortress doesn't sleep. No one dares. Fires are kept burning low to avoid drawing too much attention. Guards patrol in shifts, half limping, half awake. You take a turn on the ramparts. The wind is cold. Below, the enemy fires glow like eyes watching from the woods. They didn't win, but they didn't lose either. They're just waiting. You try not to think about it, but your mind won't let go. The way they pulled back. The way they left some of their own behind, as if sacrificing them was just strategy. You wonder what kind of leader that takes. Then you remember who you serve, and the question answers itself. In the days that follow, you help rebuild. Sort of. You patch holes with wood that's already rotting. You fill cracks in the wall with mud and hope. You carry stone, hammer nails, replace ladders. Everything you do feels like dressing a wound that's already gone septic. But still, you work. Because work keeps the thoughts away. Moira sets up a new food station in what used to be the chapel. God's got enough space upstairs, she says when someone protests. No one argues again. She hands out broth thick with barley and bits of onion peel. It's the best thing you've tasted in weeks. Some survivors talk about escape, not plans, just dreams. Maybe if we wait till dawn, maybe the south wall's less watched, maybe they'll let us leave if we ask. Duncan listens, says nothing. Later he mutters, they won't let anyone leave, not now. Not with what they know. You don't ask what he means. You think you already understand. The enemy doesn't want the fortress to fall, not yet. They want it to rot, to collapse from within. Easier that way. And it's working. People are changing. They're quieter, more cautious, suspicious. You see one man hoarding bandages, another hiding dried meat beneath floorboards. No one confronts them, not openly. But you hear the whispers. Trust is cracking, fast. The laird finally speaks again on the 5th day. He stands in the courtyard, flanked by his remaining guards. Armour polished, face pale. He thanks the dead, praises the brave, blames the enemy, promises vengeance, promises strength, promises like always that the gods are watching and that honour will see them through. You watch from the back, the crowd is thinner, the cheers forced, even the wind seems disinterested. Later you ask Moira what she thought of the speech. She stirs her pot and says, "I've heard better sermons from sick goats. You want to laugh. You really do." But instead you take another shift on the wall and wait for the horn to blow again, because you know it will. Chapter 8. The sun no longer means warmth, it means warning. Because when it sets, when it disappears behind the smoke-stained hills and the sky goes from ash grey to pitch black, that's when the real siege begins. Not the clash of steel or the thud of rams. No, that kind of war is honest. What comes at night is quieter, slower, not meant to kill quickly, but to unravel you piece by piece. That's when you're called to the ramparts. Duncan calls it the watchman's curse. You take your shift with the other survivors, some still bandaged, some still limping. No one complains anymore. Complaints died with the ones who had enough energy to hope for change. Now, when your name is called, you nod, grab a torch, and head to the top of the wall. It's routine, a ritual, like preparing a corpse. You don't even think about it. The ramparts are colder than you expect. The wind bites like it's personal. Your cloak, thin, damp and full of holes, does nothing. You shiver so hard your teeth ache. You try not to make noise, not because someone will scold you, but because silence feels sacred up here. Like if you break it, something might hear you. The torches barely hold. The wind eats at them, tearing flame from wood until all that's left is glow. You and your fellow watchmen, 6 of you tonight, are posted at intervals along the wall. Too far to touch, too close to feel alone. Just far enough to feel like ghosts pacing an invisible line between the living and the waiting. Duncan says nothing as he passes, just nods. He's lost weight. Everyone has. His armour hangs loose now, tied tight with scraps of cloth. His eyes are yellowed with sleeplessness. He still walks like a soldier, but slower. Like each step has to convince him it's worth taking. You take your place near the eastern tower. From here you can see the tree line, or you used to. Now it's just a smear of black where trees once stood. Their silhouettes blend into the night, and beyond them the fires, the enemy's fires, flickering like eyes that never blink, watching. Always watching. You stare at those fires more than you should. At first, it's because you expect them to move, to rush forward, to bring the next wave, but they never do. They just stay. Still. Unmoving. Unchanging. And that's worse somehow, because it makes you question if they're real. If any of this is real. If maybe you've already died and this is the waiting room. The hours pass slowly. You pace. You peer. You rub your arms. You check the same shadow 5 times. Every branch looks like a blade. Every gust sounds like footsteps. At some point, you stop looking outward and start looking inward. Not at your soul or your thoughts. No, at your body. At your limits, your hunger, your thirst. Your joints that crack with every movement. You begin to wonder how many more nights like this you can do before something snaps. And then come the whispers. You hear them your 3rd night on the wall. Soft. Barely there. Not voices exactly, not words. More like a hum that brushes past your ear, just loud enough to make you turn. No one's there. You glance at the next guard post. The man there is leaning forward, staring down. You call to him once, no reply. You walk over. He's asleep. Eyes wide open, lips moving, but asleep. You nudge him. Nothing. Finally, you shake him hard, and he jolts upright with a gasp, like surfacing from water. He looks at you and whispers, "They were inside the walls." Then he blinks and walks away like nothing happened. You don't sleep after that. Duncan later tells you not to trust the quiet ones. They break faster, he says. Less screaming. More slipping. You ask what he means by slipping. He taps his temple. Off the edge. You ask if it's true that someone jumped. He doesn't answer. The next night, a torch goes out. Simple enough, happens all the time. But when you relight it, there's something carved into the stone below. You crouch to read it. Just one word, soon. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's better than screaming. Back in the halls, people avoid you now. Not out of hatred, but superstition. The watchers are tainted, they say. Too close to the enemy. Too long in the wind. You don't argue, you feel it too, like the night has seeped into your skin, whispering rot into your blood. Moira hands you broth and says nothing. Duncan stops asking how you're doing. No one asks anyone anything anymore. You eat, you patrol, you survive, you begin to talk to the wall. Just once, one night, it's too quiet. You mutter a joke. The stone doesn't laugh. You laugh anyway. You know you've changed when you start missing the battle. At least then there was clarity. An enemy. A weapon. A purpose. This is slow drowning. A siege of the mind. The enemy doesn't storm the gates anymore. They haunt the hours. The empty ones. The ones between now and morning. You think about the horn. About whether it will blow again. You almost hope it does, because at least then the waiting would be over. By the fifth night, the ramparts feel like a different world. A world above the world. Up here, it doesn't matter who's in charge. Not the laird, not his steward, not even the priest who hasn't been seen since the last raid. All that matters is the firelight, the fog, and the constant suspicion that something out there is moving when it shouldn't. The guards don't talk anymore. They stand in silence, eyes red, hands frozen stiff around weapons they barely remember how to use. You're not sure if they're more afraid of what's beyond the wall or what's inside it. Either way, you stop trying to make eye contact. It feels dangerous now, like looking too long into someone else's fear might make it yours. Even Duncan has changed. He still does his rounds, still carries his axe like an extension of his spine, but he's quieter. His response is shorter. Sometimes you catch him staring at the horizon long after his shift has ended, as if daring the darkness to blink. "You ever think it's already over?" he asked once. You didn't answer. Not because you didn't have a thought, but because your thoughts are the enemy now. Too loud, too slippery. They don't stay where you put them anymore. One evening, a fog rolls in thick and fast, swallowing the lower yard before anyone can light enough torches to fight it off. It creeps up the walls, filling every gap between stone and shadow. Vision cuts down to feet. Sound bounces back strange. You can hear voices from the courtyard but can't tell which direction they come from. Moira calls it ghost's breath. Duncan calls it bad luck in a wool cloak. Whatever it is, it changes people. That night, a guard disappears. No screams, no struggle, just gone. He was posted near the eastern parapet, the same side where the carvings keep appearing, where the fires on the hill burn just a little too steadily. You find his sword stuck between stones. No blood. No sign of a fall. Just the weapon, abandoned like a dropped thought. The laird's steward insists he deserted. Moira snorts. Duncan just mutters, "Deserted upward?" A search is organised. A poor one. No one wants to volunteer. The group that finally does return, pale, empty-handed, and one man short. The steward doesn't ask questions. No one does anymore. Curiosity is expensive. It draws attention. And attention gets you reassigned to watch duty, or worse, latrine night shift. Then the weather breaks, not in your favour. A storm rolls in on the sixth night. It doesn't arrive like normal storms, gradual, thunderous. No, this one tears in with wind like knives and rain like regret. The walls become slick, the torches useless. You're ordered to stay on post. The enemy moves in storms, Duncan warns. They think we can't see, so you watch. Eyes wide, even if they bleed. You obey. You stand, soaked to the bone, cloak plastered to your skin, boots sloshing with each step. You hold your weapon, though it's too wet to grip properly. You blink against the rain, taste iron on your tongue, and realise you've bitten the inside of your cheek again. A nervous habit that never fully heals. The wind screams louder than any horn. It drowns out everything. You could be stabbed in the side and not hear it happen. That thought sticks with you all night. Every time a shadow shifts, your shoulders lock. Every time the rain eases for half a second, your breath catches. Nothing happens. And that's worse. Because now you're not just scared of dying, you're scared of not dying. of continuing this slow unraveling for another night, and another, until something in you frays completely and you no longer know which side of the wall you're supposed to be on. The guards begin to break. Not dramatically, no open weeping or screams, just small things. A man who won't put down a torch even after his shift. Another who's stopped blinking entirely. One who whispers constantly under his breath, reciting names maybe, or curses, or apologies. You hear talk of a pact. Some guards plan to sneak out, join the enemy. They'll treat prisoners better than this, one says. They've got food, fire. You want to believe that. You want to imagine they'd accept you, feed you. But deep down, you know better. The only thing the enemy wants is the fortress. And once they have it, you're just another piece of rubble. Still, you envy the thought. During a quiet shift, Duncan tells you about a man he once knew. Another watchman from another fortress. He'd stood his post for 6 straight nights. On the 7th, he climbed down the inner wall, stripped naked, and walked into the chapel. Said God was living in the stones, Duncan says. Said the wind told him secrets. You ask what happened to him. Duncan shrugs. No one saw him after that, might still be talking to the rocks. You don't laugh, you're starting to understand. The laird makes another speech. This one from the inner tower. He speaks of strength, of the gods testing them, of loyalty, of the fortress being unbreakable. He doesn't come to the wall. He doesn't stand the watch. But he tells you to endure, to believe, to fight. Someone throws a stone at his window. It misses. No one confesses. You begin marking the days with scratches on the rampart, not for counting, for memory, to prove to yourself that you were here, that you didn't disappear like the others, that your boots stood this ground, even if your mind slipped. Moira sees the scratches once, says nothing. But the next day she hands you a thicker cloak and a flask with something warm in it. Drink slow, she says, pretend it helps. And so the nights go on. The wall creaks, the wind howls, the fires burn. And you watch, because that's all that's left. Chapter 9, War Horns and Blood Oaths. The grim call to battle. The horn doesn't come at dawn this time. It comes in the dead middle of the night when most are half asleep or too exhausted to care. But the sound is unmistakable, low, long and angry. Not like before. This one isn't a call, it's a demand. You jolt upright in your corner near the storeroom, knocking over a crate of soaked firewood. No one scolds you. Everyone else is already scrambling to their feet, grabbing what counts as weapons. Axes, clubs, broken furniture with nails hammered through. You meet Duncan halfway to the courtyard. His face says everything. No sarcasm, no quip. Just grim confirmation. It's time. The laird's orders come by proxy. His steward, wrapped in a cloak far too clean for this place, shouts across the courtyard. Every man and woman to the outer wall, shields to the north, bows to the tower, kitchen hands, take up blades or bring the wounded inside. Moira pulls you aside before you go. She ties a rag around your arm, a red one, greasy and stained. For the blood, she says. Better on cloth than your hands. Then she hands you a cleaver. If you lose it, don't come back. You'd laugh that you can't feel your face. The fortress is a flurry of motion, and yet it's all too slow. There's no cavalry, no gleaming lines of defence, no rallying cry that stiffens spines. This isn't a defence, it's a final gasp. The fortress doesn't stand proud tonight. It shakes and groans and waits to be broken. You climb the stairs to the ramparts and take your position. The others around you barely resemble soldiers. A few are villagers who managed to flee inside weeks ago. Others are former guards missing pieces. An eye, a few fingers, half their resolve. The rest, like you, are just bodies filling space. Numbers pretending to mean something. And then they come. Not in waves, in a mass. Shadows against moonlight, black and purposeful, too many to count. You see shields, spears, siege ladders. The real kind. This isn't a test like last time. This is an end. The first arrows whistle through the sky. You duck instinctively. Some thud against the stone. Others find meat. A man next to you collapses, arrow in his neck. No scream, just a wet gurgle. You don't stop to help. You can't. You've learned. Pausing gets you killed. Return fire comes from above. 3 archers on the tower, their quivers nearly empty. They shoot anyway. Proud, stupid, or both. Below, the enemy hits the gate. You feel it in your feet first, then your ribs. The wood won't last. It can't. It's already cracked from the last assault. You hear the battering ram, a deep, rhythmic thud that syncs with your heartbeat. With every hit, something inside you loosens. Like your bones no longer trust your skin to hold them. Duncan appears again, this time bloodied. He doesn't say how, he just presses a short sword into your hand. They'll breach in minutes, he says. We hold the stairs. That's all. You take your place beside him. The inner staircase, narrow and slick, will funnel the enemy when the gate falls. You understand the plan. It's not to win, it's to stall. To give the others time to escape deeper inside. If there's anywhere left to escape to, they break through just before dawn. The gate splinters with a roar, a sound so raw and final it silences even the screams. Then the bodies pour in, armoured, howling, methodical. You stand your ground. Duncan moves first, striking clean. You follow, less cleanly. You swing, you stab, you miss, you hit, you fall, you rise again. Your mind becomes noise, just action and reaction. A spear brushes your sideburns but doesn't stop you. A shield slams your chest. You drop, then lurch back up. You taste blood. You hope it's yours. The stairs become red. You kill someone. It takes you a moment to realize it. Their face, young, terrified, doesn't match the body's violence. You want to say sorry. But there's no room for that here. You and Duncan hold that stairwell for longer than anyone expected. Bodies pile around your feet. Your arms grow numb. You stop feeling fear and start feeling clarity, a sharpness. This is what it's been building to, hasn't it? The hunger, the silence, the waiting. This is the release. Then Duncan takes a hit. A mace to the ribs. He drops to one knee, blood pouring from his mouth. You drag him back, shielding him with your own body. Someone rushes you. You react. You don't remember how. Eventually, someone pulls you back. You're not sure who. The line collapses. The Lairds guards fall back into the keep. The tower doors shut. You're inside now. Fewer than 30 remain. You crawl to Duncan. He's conscious, barely. Well, he croaks, did we win? You smile despite yourself. Sure, you say. Crushed them. He laughs once, then grimaces. Good. Always wanted to die a liar. But he doesn't die, not yet, and neither do you. The door to the inner keep slams shut behind you with the weight of a final decision. Outside, the fortress is no longer a fortress. It's a charred ruin. The battlements are splintered, the courtyard soaked in blood and ash. Only this final chamber, the stone heart of the keep, remains, and you're sealed inside it like a secret waiting to be forgotten. No one speaks for a while, not out of reverence. There's no time for that. It's just that no one has words left. Language, like food and firewood, has been rationed too long. You and the others, 20, maybe less, stumble into the dark hall and collapse wherever gravity allows. The wounded moan. The rest of you try not to look like you envy them. Duncan lies beside you, breathing shallow, one hand clenched around his ribs like he's holding his soul in place. You press a cloth to his side, not because it'll help, but because doing something still feels better than nothing. His blood is slow now, thick, dark. You don't say what you're thinking. He already knows. Moira moves among the bodies like a ghost wrapped in linen. Her apron is soaked red to the knees. She doesn't flinch. She binds wounds, pours water, murmurs names under her breath. Some you recognize, some she probably made up, just to remind the dying they weren't always anonymous. And finally, from the staircase, the Laird descends. He looks wrong. Not ruined, not bloody, just wrong. His cloak still draped like ceremony, but wrinkled and stained with smoke. His sword sheathed. His eyes hollow. You expect anger, or desperation, you get a performance. "We have held longer than they expected," he says, voice echoing off cold stone. "We have shown them our resolve." No one responds, not even the steward, who stands awkwardly near the wall, shifting weight like a dog too close to a burning log. "They will break before we do," the laird continues, and you can hear the strain in his tone now. He's not addressing the room. He's addressing history, the story he thinks someone will tell after this is over. As if a bard will stand where you're sitting now and sing about how the great Lord Struan faced the impossible and made it blink. You glance at Duncan. His eyes are closed. He isn't dead, but he's moved past caring about speeches. The laird offers a plan: hold this room, barricade the door, fight to the last man. Noble, clean, heroic. The steward nods along. You want to ask, what happens when the food runs out? Again. When the wounded scream through the night. When the enemy brings fire, not steel. But you don't ask. You already know. The laird's plan isn't for victory, it's for memory. He wants to die as a statue. The rest of you are just the pedestal. Moira finally breaks the silence. "Will dying pretty feed the children?" she asks. Not loud, not sarcastic, just tired. The laird's jaw tightens, but he doesn't answer. He doesn't have one. Later, you and Moira tend to the injured, while others pile furniture against the main door. It's a poor barrier. Too little wood, too many cracks. You doubt it will last an hour under assault. But it gives people something to do, something to believe in. That night, no one sleeps. Not really. You sit near Duncan, who mutters half-sentences in his haze. Some are memories, some are warnings. One, you think, might be a prayer. The keep is quiet except for breathing and the occasional cough. You wonder if the enemy hears that, if they're listening from just outside, marvelling at how few of you are left. You wonder if they're laughing. You wouldn't blame them. At some point, Moira joins you. She sits down slowly, her knees cracking like firewood. She hands you a scrap of hard bread. "Last of it," she says. "You don't eat it. You break it in half and give the larger piece back." She doesn't argue. Around dawn, someone tries to sing. A woman. Soft, wordless, just a hum. It echoes in the chamber like a lullaby sung to stone. No one tells her to stop. And then, without warning, it begins again. A thud. Distant, heavy, followed by another. Not arrows, not shouts, just pressure. You know that rhythm, you've lived with it. The enemy is back. They'd given you the night to count your blessings. Now they want what remains. The thudding grows louder. Dust shakes loose from the ceiling. The door groans. Somewhere, someone starts to cry. Quietly, embarrassed by it. Duncan opens his eyes. "Is it time?" he asks. You nod. "Good," he whispers. "Let's not wait." And in that moment, everything slows. The laird draws his sword. The guards lift their shields. The wounded clench fists they can barely raise. And you, just a kitchen runner, a torch boy, a nobody, grip your blade and prepare to make your final stand. Not for glory, not for honour, but simply because it's all that's left. Chapter 10, Witch Hunts and Superstition. Belief in the Highlands. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from exhaustion. Not the exhaustion of muscle or blood, but something deeper, the soul maybe, or whatever is left when fear eats everything else. That's the silence in the keep now. Not calm, not safety. Just the flat, heavy hush that follows when people stop pretending they can survive. The door still holds, for now. The makeshift barricade groans with every thud. You watch it like a dying fire, unsure if it's about to collapse or fade. No one speaks anymore, not even the laird. He's taken to pacing at the back of the hall, sword sheathed, muttering scripture under his breath. You catch fragments, phrases about divine vengeance, sacred duty, chosen blood. It doesn't matter. The gods aren't listening. They've had their fill of prayers from this place. Moira sits beside Duncan, dabbing his forehead with a cloth. He's alive, technically, breathing. But his eyes rarely open now, and when they do, they never focus. He whispers names, none you recognize, and clenches his hand around nothing. Sometimes he weeps, silently. Moira never comments. She just wipes his face, refolds the cloth, and hums a song that sounds like mourning disguised as melody. Then it begins. The whispers. Not from the enemy outside, but from within. It starts with the old woman near the hearth, the one who used to spin wool before her fingers curled from arthritis. She says the walls are cursed, that something wrong was brought in with the villagers, a darkness, a rot. She says she saw a girl speaking to shadows, says her milk soured the same day, says it's witchcraft. You want to laugh, but you don't, because others are listening. Another man, skinny, eyes too bright, nods. He claims the girl who died last week had the mark on her ankle, a bruise shaped like a claw. You remember the girl. She died from a spear to the stomach, but no one corrects him. Superstition isn't new here. It never left. It just went quiet when the enemy arrived. But now that the end feels near, truly near, the old fears come crawling back, desperate for meaning. They whisper about Moira. They say she's lived too long, that she always has herbs no one else finds, that she talks to the dying like she knows the road they'll take. You've seen her boil nettles, mash wild roots, recite strange chants to calm the mortally wounded. You've also seen her dig through filth for mould to treat wounds, spend her rations on vinegar for cleaning, and hold broken hands until the pulse stopped. She's not a witch. She's the only one left doing anything useful. But reason has left the keep. It slipped out between the cracks with the last breath of the man you buried yesterday. What remains is desperation, and desperation is hungry for blame. It happens just before dusk. The steward, bloody, terrified, desperate, points at Moira in the hall, says the fever spreading among the wounded is her fault, that she's cursing the broth, that she's muttering death spells into the water. Moira doesn't react. She just stares at him, eyes so tired they look hollow. Then she stands, walks to the centre of the hall, and says nothing. The laird does. He steps forward finally, voice shaking with something close to conviction. He speaks of order, of purity, of rooting out rot. He never says which, but he doesn't have to. The crowd shifts. You feel it like animals smelling blood in the wind. They don't want justice. They want a spectacle, a distraction, a scapegoat. Someone reaches for her. You move first. You stand in front of her. No words. Just the cleaver still hanging from your belt. The same one Moira handed you days ago. The man hesitates. You meet his eyes. You don't speak. You don't need to. Your silence is sharper than the blade. Moira touches your shoulder. It's all right, she says. Her voice is soft, final. They need someone to burn. You shake your head. She squeezes your hand, then looks past you, directly at the laird. If I go, she says, make sure you dig the pit deep. The bones already in there are loud. The room freezes. The laird stares back at her, something cracking in his eyes. Then he turns, walks away, and says nothing. The crowd disperses. But the seed is planted. No one touches Moira that night, but no one helps her either. When she returns to Duncan's side, no one offers her water. No one looks her way. She has become a shadow. And the worst part? You know she knew it would happen, and she stayed anyway. Later, you ask her why. She shrugs. They needed someone to fear more than the enemy. You nod, and for the first time in days you cry. Not for her, not for Duncan, not for yourself. You cry because you finally understand what this fortress has become. It's not just broken stone and empty halls, it's a mouth, a hungry one. And now it's started chewing the inside. By the next morning, the fever has spread. Not the metaphorical kind, the literal one. You can see it on faces, flush and glistening with sweat. You can hear it in the dry hacking coughs that rattle from the far side of the hall where the wounded are gathered. There's no more food, no more medicine. And still, somehow, the fever spreads. Like the fortress is exhaling sickness now. Like it's tired of holding everything in. You try to focus on tasks. Cleaning wounds, changing rags, tending to Duncan, who now speaks only in fragments, half-formed memories, names that might be real or imagined. His skin is clammy, and when you press your hand to his forehead, it burns. You exchange glances with Moira, but she doesn't say anything. She doesn't have to. She knows. You know. The laird has vanished again. Not physically. He still roams the inner staircases, still delivers the occasional speech from shadowed corners, but he's no longer truly present. You watched him yesterday standing alone, one hand on the hilt of his sword, the other pressed to the stone wall, whispering something to it like it might answer. It didn't. The steward now leads. Technically. He walks with a limp and keeps one hand buried deep in the folds of his cloak where a dagger likely hides. His voice is louder than ever. Firmer. He gives orders as if they still matter. Assigns duties. Chastises those who sit too long. But no one obeys him. Not really. His voice floats above the crowd like dust. Harmless, useless, irritating. Fear is the real leader now, and it feeds on anyone who stands out. Yesterday it was Moira. Today it's the boy who talks to himself. A scrawny thing, barely old enough to hold a blade. He's been muttering constantly for days. Prayers, curses, conversations with ghosts, maybe all three. People say he sleepwalks. That he stood by the hearth with his eyes rolled back, speaking in tongues. They say he spat on the steward's boots. They say he cursed the water. None of it's true. You know that. You've seen him. Harmless. Lost. A boy whose mind snaps somewhere between the hunger and the screams. But it doesn't matter. He's different. He's other. And now, the others want a target. You see the change happen, just like with Moira. The way people start stepping away from him. The way glances sharpen. Voices lower. They begin to circle without moving. Preparing to name him. To offer him up to the sickness like some kind of cure. You try to stop it. You stand, raise your voice, say, he's a boy, he needs rest, not fire. They ignore you. You step in front of him when the steward raises a hand to command. The steward's mouth twists. You defend every heretic now? I defend reason, you say. Moira joins you. She says nothing, but her presence is louder than any speech. Her shadow touches yours. Two figures in a hall of fading courage. For a moment it works. The steward backs down. People look away. The crowd dissolves. But the damage is done. That night the boy vanishes. No one talks about it. No one asks. But you see the blood near the southern alcove. You see the drag marks. The torn bit of tunic snagged on the nail by the old door. He's gone. The keep has claimed another. And now they look at you differently too. You're one of them now, the ones who don't break. The ones who step in. The ones who might be dangerous. And if this place has taught you anything, it's that dangerous isn't about power. It's about unpredictability. And nothing gets removed faster in a crumbling world than something unpredictable. Moira warns you that night. You're next, she says, tying a bandage over Duncan's chest. Not today, but soon. You believe her? Duncan's breathing is shallow. His eyes flutter open. He smiles when he sees you. A real smile, tired and small. Still here, he says. Still here, you echo, gripping his hand. Then the wind howls outside. It shakes the door, rattles the hinges. You freeze. Everyone does. It's not an attack. Not yet. Just a storm, maybe. But it sounds like something else. Like something howling back. Like the walls themselves are laughing. The old gods, perhaps, or the dead. And that's when someone speaks from the corner. A woman. Hooded. Her voice calm. We're cursed, she says. The laird brought this on us. Dug too deep. Took something that wasn't his. You turn to look. You don't recognize her. She wasn't here before. You swear she wasn't. But now she is. She continues. There's something beneath the chapel. Beneath the altar. I saw it once. Years ago. Sealed. Forgotten. You wait for laughter. For someone to call her mad. No one does. Because now, madness is easier to believe than luck. That night, you sleep with your back against the wall, hand wrapped around your blade. Duncan breathes beside you. Moira doesn't sleep at all. She watches the others, Waits. She knows what comes next. Not a battle, not a charge. A purge, a quiet one. The kind that doesn't need horns or steel. Just a few words, a few lies, and the right spark. And once it starts, there will be no stopping it. Chapter 11. Plague and the silence of stone. The final collapse. It starts with the smell. Not fire, not blood, not even rot. No, this is something subtler. Sour, faint, like wet cloth left in the dark too long. Like breath that turns the air stale. You notice it first while bending over Duncan, trying to coax a sip of water into his cracked mouth. He winces, then whispers, "It's in the walls." You don't understand. Not then, but Moira does. She catches the scent too, freezes, then sniffs the air like an animal sensing rain. She sets down her cloth, wipes her hands and stands. "Move everyone," she says, "away from the wounded." Her voice is steady, but her hands are shaking. You obey, though the others protest. There's nowhere else to go. The keep is a single chamber now, every corner already full of smoke, fever or fear. Still, you heard them. Push the wounded into one group, the healthy or less sick into another. You draw a line with a trail of old ash across the stone floor. A gesture more than anything. A symbol. Even if it means nothing, it feels like trying. And right now, trying is all that separates you from madness. The fever has changed. It's faster now, harsher. The man who coughed blood yesterday is dead today. The woman who moaned through the night doesn't moan anymore. Her lips are blue. Her skin is grey. Someone says she vomited black before she stopped breathing. Moira doesn't deny it. "It's not just illness," she mutters. "It's plague." That word still carries weight, even here, even now. It falls into the room like iron dropped onto glass. No one says it again. They don't need to. It's in the way people start covering their faces, the way they shrink from touch, the way eyes dart toward the door, toward cracks in the wall, toward anything that looks like an exit, even if there's nowhere left to run. You ask Moira where it came from. She shrugs. "From us," she says. "From the rats. From the water. From the enemy. From the gods. From everything we forgot how to bury. There's no medicine left. No herbs. The root cellar was burned days ago. Accidentally or intentionally, no one can say." Moira boils water laced with old bark. She crushes charcoal into paste. She whispers prayers in a language you don't recognize. None of it helps. The dead begin piling faster than you can bury them, so you stop. You cover them in old blankets, stack them by the southern wall. Eventually the wall is full, so you make another stack. Then another. Duncan doesn't speak anymore. His breaths are slow and shallow. You sit beside him, hand on his shoulder. You talk. Not because he responds, but because the silence is worse. You tell him stories from before. About your village. About the time you saw a goat knock over a merchant's stall. About how Moira once slapped a guard with a ladle. You don't know if he hears, but you say them anyway. One night he opens his eyes, just for a moment. He looks at you, really looks, then whispers, "Don't let them burn me." You nod. He closes his eyes again. The laird finally reappears. He's thinner now, eyes sunken, voice hoarse. He stands before the remaining survivors, 12? 15, and speaks of resilience, of trials, of purification. Those who are ill must be separated, he says. Those who carry the mark must be removed. You ask what removed means. He doesn't answer. Moira confronts him later, calls him a coward. He listens in silence, then tells the steward to bar the stairwell to the upper chamber. Only those deemed unmarked may pass. You and Moira are not among them. By morning, the door is sealed. You pound on it once, just once, then stop. The chamber grows quieter with each hour. Less moaning, less coughing, less everything. Even the rats have vanished. The fire is cold. The torches burn low. The air tastes like old iron. And then it happens. A girl screams. You rush to her side. Her brother is convulsing, limbs twisted, mouth foaming. He thrashes once, twice, then goes still. His body twitches again, reflexively. Then nothing. The scream dies in her throat. She looks at you, eyes wide. He didn't even have a fever, she says. You step back. That night, the others begin to whisper again. Not about Moira, not about the steward. About you, about how you've been near the dying and never caught the sickness. About how Duncan lasted longer than he should have. About how you haven't cried in days. You hear it. You see the way their eyes narrow, the way they shift when you walk past. You know the signs now. You saw it with the boy, you saw it with Moira. You know what comes next. Moira does too. She sits beside you, hands you the cleaver. If they try, she says, you run. You shake your head. I won't leave Duncan, you say. She doesn't argue, just nods. The keep is nearly silent now. Only a few breaths remain. Even the laird's speeches have stopped. His voice gone hoarse. His audience dead. Moira lies down beside Duncan that night. She hums softly. A lullaby, maybe, or a hymn. You close your eyes and wait for the last knock on the door. By now, the keep doesn't feel like a fortress anymore. It feels like a tomb that hasn't made up its mind. Everything is too quiet, too still. You don't hear the battering ram. You don't hear arrows. You don't even hear footsteps anymore. Only breath, and not much of that. The fortress doesn't fall with fire or fury. It collapses in silence. Duncan dies just before dawn. No scream, no gasp. Just a breath that never comes back. You're awake when it happens, hand resting on his wrist, counting the pulse, even when you know there's nothing left to count. His face is calm, his body light. You sit beside him for an hour before telling Moira. She already knows. You don't burn him. You cover him in a clean cloth and lay him near the wall away from the others. You whisper something. A prayer, a promise, you're not even sure. You don't cry. You think about it. You wait for it. But the tears don't come. Not for Duncan, not for you. There are maybe 6 people left in the main hall now. No one knows for sure. The boundaries have collapsed. The lines between sick and well, sane and broken, friend and stranger, they've all bled into one another. You pass the same people and forget their names. You hear voices and can't place the faces. Everyone looks like someone else's shadow. The laird has locked himself in the upper chamber. The steward is dead stabbed in the back with a sharpened bone during a ration dispute. No one claimed it. No one cleaned it up. You step around his body each time you pass the staircase. At some point, someone covered his head with a cloth. That's all. Moira is the only one still moving like she has purpose. She checks the remaining wounded. Though by now, wounded mostly means breathing. She still tries to clean, still boils what little water you can find, still hands out cloth rags for fevers that don't break. When you ask her why she keeps trying, she shrugs. Because someone has to. Then, quieter, because it's the only thing left that's mine. One morning, you wake to find the door ajar. Not open. Just ajar. As if someone changed their mind at the last moment. You rise slowly, heart pounding. You check the barricade. No signs of breach. The wind outside is still. No torches in the hills. No banners. No screams. Just cold air. You step outside. Just for a moment. The courtyard is empty. Charred, pitted, littered with broken shields and half-buried bones, but empty. The fires are dead. The gate's broken. The siege is over. You walk back inside. Moira sits on the stone bench where Duncan died. She listens carefully as you speak. You tell her what you saw, what you didn't see. She doesn't blink, just says, "Then they didn't win. They just left." And that's when you understand the truth. The enemy never intended to conquer. They intended to watch you rot. And they did. You survive another day. And another. Days measured not by sun or food, but by who is still here when you wake. On the 3rd day after Duncan's death, Moira begins coughing. Deep, wet, rattling. She hides it at first, then stops trying. You fetch water, press cloths to her forehead, recite her own words back to her. Boil the bark, stir slow, wait for it to turn dark. She smiles. It never helped, you know. You nod. I know. When she's too weak to walk, you carry her to the last unspoiled corner of the hall, the one with the mural of the old saint, the one whose face was scratched off years ago during a brawl no one remembers. She lies beneath it, wrapped in Duncan's cloak. Her breath is shallow, her eyes clear. You'll be alone, she whispers. You don't answer. There are worse things, she adds, but not many. That night she's gone. You bury her beside Duncan. You mark the stone with the hilt of a broken dagger. Now you're the only one. You pace the keep. You talk aloud, even when no one listens. You light a torch just to feel heat. You count bones. You sit in the laird's chair and wonder if it remembers him. You shout once, loud, no echo. The walls are full. And still, somehow, you wait. Not for rescue, not for revenge, just for something to end. Chapter 12. You stop counting the days. At some point, the numbers feel more like accusations than achievements. What day is it now? The 40th since the siege began. The 12th since Duncan died. The 3rd since Moira's breath stilled beneath a faceless saint. Time doesn't pass anymore. It curdles, thickens around you like spoiled milk. The sun still rises, you assume, but the light that leaks through the cracks in the stone doesn't feel warm, just pale, empty, like the glow of bones under skin. You are alone now, not just practically, existentially, the kind of alone that strips your name from your tongue and leaves you with just breath and motion. You wake, you eat, if anything edible still exists. You pace the same worn corridor, drag your hand along the same cracked wall, whisper names like incantations just to keep them alive. Moira, Duncan, the boy who sang to himself, the old woman with the shaking hands, the guard who joked about soup. They were real. You tell yourself that. They must have been. You didn't invent that much blood. The laird is still alive. Technically. You found him 2 days ago, curled in the inner sanctum, clutching a rusted sword to his chest, babbling to no one. His cloak was gone, his face sunken and patchy with rot. He didn't recognize you. Or maybe he did, and that's why he turned his back. You left him there, not out of cruelty, out of mercy. There are some deaths that shouldn't be witnessed. And anyway, you have your own ghosts to tend to. You sleep in the chapel now. Not because it's safe, nothing is, but because it's quiet. The stained glass is mostly broken, the pews smashed for firewood, the altar covered in dust and old bones. But the echo is still there. When you speak, it answers. When you cry, it absorbs. One night, you open the old trapdoor behind the altar. Moira had once mentioned it, just once. Beneath the chapel, she'd said, was the original root of the keep. The old foundation. Older than memory, older than the laird's name. There are things in the stone that remember, she had whispered, and things that do not forget. You descend with a torch. The stairs curve tightly, slick with moss. The air is thick, not just with dust, but weight, like walking into the lungs of something long asleep. The space below isn't a room, it's a wound, a hollowed-out cavity of jagged stone and collapsed arches, as if the keep was built atop a mouth that was never meant to be closed. You walk slowly. The silence here is deeper than above, not dead. Listening. You find markings on the wall, etchings, symbols, circles within circles, names in a language you almost recognize but don't. You run your fingers along one. It burns cold. At the center, there's a stone slab, flat, unbroken, covered in handprints, old, blackened, layered one atop another. You kneel beside it. And that's when you hear the voice, not from the stone, not from the hall above, from within, not words, just a feeling. You were not meant to remain. You blink, you rise. The torch sputters, shadows press closer, you try to speak. Your voice doesn't come, not from fear, but from understanding. The kind that burrows in and settles like frost in bone. You are the last, and the fortress is tired. Not angry, not cruel, just weary of holding, of hiding, of being remembered. You leave the chamber slowly. Back above, the hall feels smaller, colder. The sky through the shattered glass looks the same. But now you know the keep doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be forgotten. That night, you take down what's left of the barricade. You unbar the gates. You light the final torch and walk into the outer yard. And you sit. You face the field where fires once burned, where banners once waved, where the enemy stood. Now it's empty. Not abandoned. Finished. You whisper Duncan's name, Moira's. Yours, though it feels foreign now. You whisper the fortress's name, but stop halfway. It doesn't want to be called anymore. And you understand. Some places survive not to be saved, but to be buried. You wake to birdsong. Not many, just one or two. Distant, unsure, as though even they aren't entirely convinced the fortress is done collapsing. For a moment you lie still, unsure if you're alive or remembering what it felt like to be. The air is different. It no longer smells of blood or smoke. It smells like dirt. And something softer beneath it. Rain, maybe. Or moss. Or the absence of rot. Your back aches from sleeping on stone. Your fingers are stiff. Your legs cold. But you're still here, still breathing. The fire you built last night is little more than embers now. And the keep behind you looms like a memory trying to hold its shape. You turn and look at it one last time. It's not the same place you arrived at. That fortress, the proud one, with its banners and guards and barking orders, that one died a long time ago. What remains is a carcass draped in shadow. A broken shell. A monument to what happens when people mistake stone for safety and cruelty for strength. You step forward, not quickly, not triumphantly, just forward. For the first time since the siege began, your feet cross the gate, not as someone running errands or fleeing death, but as someone leaving because there's nothing left to guard, no battle to fight, no dead to bury, just distance and wind. The landscape outside is unfamiliar, even though you once knew it. The trees are taller than you remember. The grass is patchy. You see no horses, no banners, no signs of movement. The enemy has long gone. Whether they won or simply moved on, you'll never know. The battle was never truly about them anyway. It was about the people inside. And they're all gone. You walk for hours before you even realize your legs are moving. The fortress grows smaller behind you, then disappears altogether when you crest a low ridge and pass into the tree line. There's no path, no road, just moss and silence and a sky too wide for your eyes to process after weeks of stone ceilings. At midday, you stop by a stream. The water is cold and clear. You wash your hands first, then your face. You catch your reflection and barely recognize it. Your eyes are hollow, your jaw sharper. There's dirt in your teeth and scars on your cheek, but you're real, still real. You whisper their names again. Duncan, Moira, the boy with the humming voice, the mother who gave you bread, the cook who once laughed about spoiled onions, the old man who carved a chess set from scraps of bone. You say them slowly, one at a time, like stones placed gently in the current. You don't know if anyone will remember them, so you do it yourself. You say them again, louder this time, and then you keep walking, toward where, you're not sure. The next village, if it still exists, a ruined farm, maybe nothing, but each step feels different than the ones before. Lighter, not free. Nothing will ever feel free again, but hollowed out, like your bones are still carrying too many ghosts to sink. That night you build another fire. You sleep beneath the stars. You dream of the fortress, but it's empty, clean, no blood, no cries. Just empty halls where your footsteps echo and no one turns to look. And in the centre, on the chapel floor, you find a single red ribbon, Moira's. Tied in a knot, untouched by dust. When you wake, your eyes are wet. Finally. It's been so long, you forgot what that felt like. The days pass, one becomes 2, then 5. The world opens up in fragments, abandoned barns, collapsed watchtowers, creeks you can drink from. You eat bark, berries, roots. Once you find a small herd of goats on a distant slope. They don't run, you don't chase. In time, you begin to speak aloud again. Not for company, for memory. You speak of what happened, not to mourn it, not to explain it, but to make sure it doesn't vanish with the stone. You tell yourself you'll reach a town eventually. You'll find a scribe, a monk, someone who can write it all down, who'll carve it into parchment, not for glory, not even for warning, just to say, this happened, these people lived, this fortress stood, and it broke. One night, weeks later, you reach the edge of the burned village. No signs of life, just ash and a single wooden post still standing in the centre square. Carved into it is a name. Yours? No. But familiar. One of the fallen. You sit beside it and light a fire. This, you think, is enough. Tomorrow you'll move on. But tonight you speak. You tell the post everything, every breath, every death, every mistake. You speak until your voice breaks, until your throat bleeds, and when you're done, you close your eyes, not in sleep, but in peace. Because for the first time, the fortress doesn't follow you. It stays behind, where it belongs, buried in stone. And in you, the last witness. So you've walked through the stone corridors. You've watched the fires burn. You've listened to the laird shout sermons while his people rotted in silence. And now that the ashes have settled, now that only one witness remains, we have to ask, what was the point of all this suffering? Let's be honest. That fortress didn't fall because the enemy broke through the gate. It fell long before that. It collapsed the moment leadership became theatre and survival became performance. It fell when power prioritized pride over planning, when superstition replaced science, when fear silenced the truth. Let's criticize this properly. First, the laird. A man whose only real talent was speaking louder than the dying could moan. A self-proclaimed protector who hoarded power, wasted resources on feasts and flattery, and then, when the walls cracked, blamed everyone else. If leadership is a fire, he was smoke visible, dramatic, and absolutely useless. And don't get me started on the steward. That man had one job: logistics. Food, firewood, medicine. But what did he count instead? Whispers, rumours, marks of the plague. The only thing he distributed with consistency was blame. Now the people, the people. Crushed by hunger, yes, but let's not pretend their hands were clean. It wasn't just death that spread in that keep, it was cowardice. The same villagers who once shared bread turned into wild dogs the moment someone coughed. They let fear dictate justice. They killed the sick before the sickness could, and then they called it order. But let's ask the real question, what if you were there? What if it was you inside those crumbling walls? Could you have survived? The answer depends on whether you could do what they could not, adapt. Because that fortress, it didn't need more knights. It needed engineers. It needed someone to look at a pile of bones and say, that's a frame for a trap. It needed someone to see rotten cabbage and think, fermentation, vitamin C. Let's not die of scurvy and stupidity. It needed someone to boil everything, filter rainwater with charcoal, create quarantine zones instead of gossiping about curses. It needed real leaders, not loud ones. People like Moira, who gave when others took. People who asked how instead of who to blame. And yes, superstition killed them. Not disease, not war, not famine. It was the refusal to think. The refusal to question the priest who said plague was divine punishment instead of a filthy well. The refusal to listen to the woman with herbs in favour of burning her for knowing too much. The refusal to share knowledge, tools, warmth, because everyone was hoarding for a tomorrow they never saw. So if you were there, the best thing you could have brought wasn't a sword. It was a plan. Rain collectors, controlled fire use, basic hygiene protocols, rotating watch shifts, a system to document the sick, not rumours, but symptoms. And when the laird locked the doors and blamed fate, you'd open the windows and let air back into that suffocating ruin. You'd challenge them, not with violence, but with sense. Because here's the truth. No one said out loud, the fortress didn't have to fall, it chose to. And if you want to survive history, you have to do better than the people who lived through it.